Welcome to the special meeting for the Lake Mills Parks Board of June 3rd, 2024. It is now 5:03, and I'll read the agenda items, and then we'll go into a couple of things. So the biggest reason for this meeting is to determine what our Parks Board recommendation, our preferred recommendation, is going to be. So that's the reason for the special Parks Board meeting. That's agenda number one. In a moment we'll do roll call, then we'll do the guest and presenters. We'll move number 7 up to the 4th because we want to make sure Susan has time, and plus it might impact what we discuss as we go forward. And then we'll do the Parks Board minutes, review and approval of the May 22nd ones. We'll get the director's report from Eric, public comments, and then new business, which is to finalize a recommendation on the next steps regarding fulfilling the City Council Resolution 2341A, making certain that recommendations concerning citizen and city goals for the use and maintenance of preservation of the mill pond. And we have a number of pieces to examine and to consider, so that's where we are. If time, we will do letter C under the new business, which is the Sandy Beach restaurant details. We'll also decide when we are going to have these meetings, what time and date, and then any announcements, and then recommendations for future agenda items, and then the next meeting is going to be either 5:30 on a Monday, July 8th, or Wednesday, July 17th. So that is the agenda. So may I get a roll call, and I'll start. Tim Sprecher, Park Chair.
Anita Martin.
Craig Baker.
Mary Schmager.
Mike Niesman.
All right, thank you. So presenter Susan from the Rock Lake Improvement Association. Are you ready to go? Now, Susan, what's the signal that you want me to advance?
No, I'll just kind of look around. We were joking that yeah, that I don't have a screen that's visible. It's black. But no problem, no problem. So thank you very much for carving out space in today's agenda to discuss this time-sensitive issue, and that's why I kind of pressed to get to you earlier rather than later in the summer. And I understand the rest of the meeting will be devoted to your decision on the mill pond, and the really good news about this whole discussion is that perhaps this will be your next project. Excellent. Sandy Beach was not designed to manage its stormwater beyond channeling it directly to the lake. When the city had the chance to go ahead and change course with the redesigned boat launch, the green infrastructure designed into that launch swale was not completed to the original intent. Remediation of that launch back to the original design would cost additional funding. Now the city has the chance to revise its design of the restaurant, parking lot, and the rest of the park to protect the lake as the lake continues to face increased pressures of increased runoff, amazing rain that we've had recently, increased water temperatures, and increasingly shorter ice-on times. As you probably remember, this winter was crazy with how quick the ice melted. Undoubtedly, the city will have a financial interest in the success of the new restaurant and the redesigned park. There, that's off my shoreline. Algae blooms along the shoreline and beach advisories closures from high bacterial counts will not be good for business of Sandy Beach. Bacteria thrive in warmer waters, and Sandy Beach West has more water quality problems than any other city beach. From 2018 to 2023, Sandy Beach West had 10 advisories and 12 closures due to elevated E. coli levels. During that same time frame, Bartles Beach had 1. The only other nearby beach facing beach impairment is Lake Ripley. They decided to address the issue with green infrastructure carefully designed into the entire park, and we think Sandy Beach should do the same. Establishing the minimum impervious surface setback requirements similar to Herring's, which was about 130 feet, will reduce stormwater runoff from the restaurant and into the lake. And when we were very careful in our comments of saying the minimum impervious surface setback. So what we're talking about is not just the foundation of the restaurant, but their patio that they might put out. Some people think that they'll put in pervious surfaces for the patio. Others will say, no, I don't think so. For sanitation reasons, they're going to put concrete so they can spray it off, et cetera, et cetera. But whatever is the design decision, we're asking for that whole thing to be set back 130 feet. That particular setback was what was there for Herring's Beach, and that restaurant was very successful for 27 years. And by having that greater setback, it provided unimpeded access for beachgoers to go from Sandy Beach East and Sandy Beach West, as you can tell from the guy lifting the lovely beer can there. And it also gave the participants of the restaurant, or patrons of the restaurant, some privacy as well. There are a wide variety of permeable surfaces for the architect to choose from, but critical to the success of these surfaces are how they are prepared. Green infrastructure professionals have indicated that if the subsurface isn't correctly prepared, the water will not infiltrate anyways and will simply run off, so you might as well just have concrete. The cost of managing stormwater is only going to rise. Currently, stormwater management in the city of Lake Mills is funded by property taxes. In a 2007 study, the city found that residential taxpayers pay 77% of the cost of stormwater management, but only contribute 40% of the impervious surfaces. Tax-exempt properties accounted for 20.5% of the impervious surfaces while paying nothing to maintain them. At that time, commercial properties contributed 22.8% of the impervious surfaces. It is in the best interest of the city and its residents to implement best practices on their own properties. The Sandy Beach renovation offers an outstanding opportunity to feature stormwater management practices that the public could easily view. Consequently, the restaurant should manage its roof runoff using a rain garden, and then what the city of Madison calls a rain garden light, which is really kind of intriguing. That's that picture of the rain ladder, the rain drop, I don't know what you would call it. And all it does is they disconnected the drainage, put that little chain in, do a 5x5 square of amended soil, throw in a few plants, and they found that that alone improved infiltration 46 to 64%. So what you could do is have the majority of the roof running off into a rain garden, identify that for residents so they understand that, but then do a small part of the roof onto something else to give people ideas. The park could also feature other projects as well, such as infiltration and diversions, to offer the top 4 practices for homeowners: rain gardens, permeable surfaces in their patios or in their walkways perhaps, diversion, and infiltration. And we could probably get a grant where you identify these practices so that people are actually educated on the stormwater management. So, what should the Parks Board do? The city manager has outlined the architect's schedule to the city council. They are looking to finish their construction documents by the end of July. So that's why I consider this a time-sensitive issue. Please recommend to the city council in June, or at least early July, that they go ahead and recommend that the architect design maintaining impervious surfaces at least 130 feet from Rock Lake shoreline, and the restaurant doesn't show up smack dab against the shoreline. Ask them to implement green infrastructure practices within the restaurant's design, including permeable patios, walkways, rain gardens. We talked about that. And then the other thing that's really important is that ask the city council to implement green infrastructure in the redesign of the parking lot and the park from the beginning, because that's when it's going to be fiscally responsible and actually effective. Doing something afterwards is just ineffective and a waste of money. One more idea. Your thoughtful, considered study of the mill pond is drawing to a close. You should request from City Council permission to analyze the parking requirements at Sandy Beach. The parking lot will dramatically impact the water quality of Rock Lake, the amount of recreational space available to our residents, as well as the aesthetics of the park. Mead and Hunt drew up a conceptual design based on input from a previous city manager and a previous city council. In fact, in the earlier conversations we were having today, it was mentioned that that design is 8 years old. According to that design, the amount of parking would triple. It is targeted to grow from 127 spaces to 374. Part of this increase was to accommodate banquet facilities. A survey by UW River Falls, commissioned by this City Council in January of 2023, clearly determined that residents did not want to pay for those facilities. When RLAI brought up the projected increase in the size of parking lot during public comments, council members obliquely conferred with each other on the reason for expanding the lot, which is actually revenue generation. Is this the right solution for the park? Around a 50% increase in asphalt or concrete. None of that space can be enjoyed by park visitors. Is there another way to raise needed revenue? According to the 2022 strategic plan of the City Council, they want to focus on the restaurant and the parking lot. It would be prudent to delegate analyzing parking lot requirements while the council is working on decisions associated with the restaurant, rather than waiting for the council to initiate analysis after the restaurant is resolved. So you guys could kind of work in conjunction rather than being so sequential. We'd like to stress that your opinion does matter. You should raise your voice on the most significant park within the city's portfolio, more than the mill pond. This project will be the most consequential project for how residents interact with the lake and how the lake is impacted by that interaction. And so we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Susan.
I have a question. Will those slides be available to us? Are they, Eric, do you know if that'll be on the...
I can leave them, Eric, on the PC. They're downloaded there. And then what I was also going to do, although the slides are never as nice, I've generated a PDF with my notes underneath, and I will send it to you, and then you can distribute it to the board members, because I don't 100% have everybody's email. And then I was also going to send it, with your permission, to the City Council, just to let them know that we had this conversation, or I can wait until after you guys make your decision.
I would probably have it included on the agenda as well when it's posted online for a viewable document, so it'll at least be available at that point as well.
And Susan, would you have, is this in part of your presentation, I'm hearing the terms they and such. Who's the they? Could you cite the sources, either who the engineers were, who are the ones that are saying that it's got to be 130 feet?
No, that was what was already there. So that was just what was already there, based the best we could decide, as well as Jefferson County, on old aerials designs. How far back was old herrings? And so we said, just keep it that way. We're not asking for anything special. Just keep it what you've always had for the last 27 years. Obviously, we'd like more. We'd be happy at 130 feet, because that would be good.
And a lot of people know Sandy Beach is Sandy Beach, and then the term West Sandy Beach and East Sandy Beach. So anything that was east of the sandbar is considered East Sandy Beach. Anything of the old boat launch, that's East Sandy Beach.
Yeah, and actually those two beaches are tested separately, and they are maintained separately. And so if you go on the EPA website, you will see that Rock Lake has a big old red impaired beach, Sandy Beach West. And then Rock Creek is impaired for phosphorus. And Mud Lake is impaired for phosphorus, but they identify Rock Lake as impaired for swimming. And that's just the way it is. We were hit in 2022, and then we are still on the list. I checked before this presentation. And right now, Eric is posting what the issues are and the situation, and it caused me actually some concern. There was a sign saying that the beach was closed, and I was going there just to check for purple loosestrife, and there was a young family there with little kids, and the kids were playing and splashing their faces, and I was just like, no, this was last year. Absolutely not this year. This was obviously the fall. I was looking for purple loosestrife. But the people, the point was, they saw the sign, they walked right past it, and they never really saw it. Because finally, I said, do you realize that this may not be the best thing to do for your little one? Having her drink the water? And they were all amazed. So it's actually something that we should take a look at how to alleviate versus signage. Though signage is very important, and we certainly support the change the city now posts for advisories and closures. So this was a great improvement and a step up. So the city really stepped up, because in the past, in a prior administration, a prior city manager, prior city council, they never posted for advisories. They said it was swim at your own risk.
Would you be able to include a link to that EPA website when the stuff you send me, just so we can get there? You know what I'm talking about, the EPA?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'll write that down.
Can I ask Eric a question regarding, this is specific regarding the EPA designation of an impaired beach. Is that something that we have, Parks Board is talking about? How do you remediate that? How do you get after that? Is that something that has been brought to the attention of this board, or something that would be on our agenda?
Remediation, no. As far as what can be done in the future now, as far as actual signing practices and protocols, I mean, that was decided already at this point. But I mean, I suppose it could be as far as a recommendation, but regarding the actual beaches, that could be Parks Board, but anything within the water, I'm under the understanding that would be the township as well.
Yeah.
So.
I was also going to ask at a presentation to the Public Works Board, because there are a few things that we could do. We have assumed that it was geese, right? That was the conversation, but we've never done the macro testing to see if it indeed is avian. Okay, so that's one thing that we can do. That the E. coli is actually coming from geese. That's been the assumption. However, we could do testing for that. That's one thing that the Public Works Board could do. The other thing that they could do is, with all this wonderful rain that we've been getting, they could take samples out of the storm water drain that's going right very close to Sandy Beach West. Is there something funky going on there? They can take their cameras and look to see where the stormwater drain intersects with the sewage drain and take a peek. I did talk to Randy about these ideas, and he says he's open, but he needs direction, from City Council or from other people to say, yeah, that's something that we would like you to do, versus just go around creating new work.
Randy is what title?
He's the director of the Public Works. So how do you say his last name? Myram. Okay. But anyways, he came from Kenosha, and he was very, very familiar. Kenosha had many beaches closed from cracked infrastructure coming between sewage lines and storm lines. It's not uncommon. In fact, that's probably one of the most common causes along Lake Michigan. I've been spending time with the DNR beach people.
Any other questions, Mary, McCray, Anita?
I had one clarifying question. You were requesting 130 feet of separation from the lake. Was it to all impervious or?
Right, impervious surfaces, yep.
Right, so that's something we'll add to the agenda going forward, as to at least getting reports as to where we are and what our options are, and and maybe why East Sandy Beach is way different than West Sandy Beach. So there's got to be.
Well, there will have to be extra investigation, because it's not enough to hypothesize. I think we actually need to do the testing to try to figure out. And now that Eric and the Public's Work Board with the Public Works Department, they can test for E. coli in-house, which is perfect. So we could go ahead and schedule these tests and do it all within the city. And you don't have to be schlepping back and forth with state lab or anything like that. So we can capitalize on a good rain event, get the samples collected, get tested without having to make sure they're refrigerated, et cetera, et cetera. There's certain protocol associated with the avian. Maybe on the macro, determining that it's avian, we would need to also do some stuff at state lab. We would also, RLIA would be willing to help with that. But on the other hand, if we're just looking at human sewage, we have those experts right here in town to do that.
Do you know, Susan, or does anyone present know, does swimmer's itch differ from East Sandy Beach to West Sandy Beach?
I mean, I don't have the data to collect it for the most part right now, so I wouldn't be able to compare.
Okay.
But we haven't had any reported swimmer's itch this year, at least at Sandy Beach. But then again, it comes forward to like an actual swimmer saying, I've received swimmer's itch, this is the body of water I was in. I haven't received those reports yet.
What prompts the question is that if one is degraded, there's a lot of different kind of weeds and such, foliage in the water, aquatic stuff. That's a lot of times where might be a difference there, but maybe not.
The one thing that's interesting that you bring up swimmer's itch, so I was looking at past history of recommendations for Sandy Beach, and one of the recommendations was some sort of shower for the beach. That would be helpful for swimmer's itch. It would be helpful for the E. coli counts too. So either, showering beforehand and then showering afterwards to get rid of swimmer's itch, or toweling briskly. So thank you, I really appreciate it. I know you guys are extremely busy.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
here.
much.
Can I ask, is swimmer's itch different from chiggers, or is it the same? Are they different?
Yes, it's different things.
It is.
People refer to them the same, but they are in fact different pathological entities. I forget chiggers, but certainly swimmer's itch is schistosomiasis.
Yes, chiggers usually comes up from the ground.
Yeah.
Sand, which is probably
Yep. Chiggers are normally called like sand mites for the most part, so it actually comes up in the insect that vaguely bites.
But people use interchangeably, I think.
Because they both itch and cause
They
red
both itch.
dots.
That's right.
But that might be something we want to investigate and publish and see if there's anything we can do about it. Because all these things affect use, and if we can do something about it, it'd be worth exploring. So thank you. Anything else? Right. If not, we are going to go to the Parks Board's minutes, review and approval of May 22nd, 2024. I believe there's 7 pages.
7
Awesome.
very
pages.
awesome pages.
They were very awesome. I move approval of the minutes. You approve of minutes here? Second.
Do we have a vote then? Did I hear?
Discussion, perhaps?
First?
Okay.
Because I know that Misty contacted me, and it has to do with the written, which is still the official record of the proceedings, correct? The written minutes?
The written minutes are the
Or
official record
printed.
of the proceedings.
And so she said that the links, for instance, create a problem because they're typed in a different color.
Yeah, if you're going to attach documents to them, I would attach the physical documents so that you know what we're referring to rather than a link that could change through time.
Right. The minutes or the director's report is attached. I was going to talk to her, and we're supposed to have a meeting sometime next week. I was wondering, because I think I've been told by some people that they find the links quite useful, for
Greg Waters
instance.
has been saying that, yes.
And somebody else has told me that, honestly, not my mother. But you could just have an appendix, and I could just print out in regular type, and then say, see appendix whatever, if you wish to go to that.
If you go through our books, our minutes have historically been much more action
Yep.
items. You go through a narrative, you provide much more information. My opinion is that it's not necessary. But they've been approved, and that's your prerogative.
Well, and I guess just the philosophy of it is, I leave it up to the consumers.
When you talk about philosophy, though, I think you have to start with past
And the legal
practice.
philosophy, exactly. But what the consumers find useful, and I have thought that rather than watching and reading or listening for 2.5 hours, I can boil this down so you can read it in 10 minutes and you get what we said. And a year later, when someone says, well, did we talk about this? You can say, well, why, in fact, we did, and here were the arguments. But I don't want to clog the sewer pipes with paper, so I'm perfectly amenable to, I mean, you could strip it way down to just here is the amendments or the options. And what was.
You're the secretary. The
But
board is
I
adopting.
serve at the pleasure of the board and the city
board is
council.
adopting them. I think they're overkill personally.
Yeah.
I've reviewed a lot of minutes through my time. I think that, you know, it's kind of like just the facts. You hypothesize, you add colorful language, you add, you know, your thoughts and your interpretation of what's happening. They're approving the minutes. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I mean, function versus form, I guess.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to ask questions?
Yes. It is state, if you would, state your name, and we have a sign-in up here somewhere.
Okay.
I think it's on the lectern, isn't
On the
it?
lectern, okay.
From the lectern, my name is Rick Hagan. No sign.
Should be a sheet of, or those, Susan. I'll provide one for you. I would ask that if you are making comment to just do it by the microphone, please, just so we have it for recording.
So my comment is in regards to what you were just discussing. I've had this very conversation with Mr. Drescher. Part of the issue, whether you're hypothesizing or not, is to sit and watch a 2.5-hour meeting and not be able to search a keyword. So if you're looking, if the scope of the meeting goes to a number of different places, it's, you know, if you're looking for one specific thing that was discussed, there's absolutely no way to search video except to watch 2.5 hours as best you can. So that's my comment. It would be in all the meetings. I realize how incredibly convenient it is to simply turn on a video recorder and say that you've recorded the meeting and it's available to watch. But for anyone that's looking for anything specific and trying to find records on anything or discussions or any information, it's near impossible unless you've got hours and hours and hours. And Dan can attest to that. We had that conversation when we were looking for something. So that's my comment. Thank you so much.
Just a point, there is a bit of a search in the sense that you can go to the agenda item and click on that, and that gets you to that. But I don't know about any more refined searches.
I propose that we put this on an agenda
Sure.
item and maybe come up with a structure
Sure.
to consider as far as have a synopsis as
Okay.
one, and then have the actual meeting minutes in more detail as a separate attachment or something if someone wants to get into more of the
Okay.
narrative. But that's, I don't know if we need to decide that tonight.
Okay, I don't think we have time.
But we do want to respect anyone that's reading these, anybody that's searching these, so they know, plus your time too, Mike, which is valuable. All right, so is that all right with the board that we put that as a future agenda item?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
The motion was made to approve.
Yes, as I was saying. So we have a motion, we have a second, are we ready to approve the minutes as written? And I'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, they are accepted as written. Let's move on to Eric's Parks and Forestry Director's Report, please.
keep this very brief, just so you guys can get to Mill Pond as well. But since the last meeting, we've had kind of the start of a few of our larger special events throughout the weekends. We had the junior fishery this last weekend, as well as the first triathlon of the season. As of today, we are fully staffed with seasonal staff and doing what we can to keep the parks up and running when it is not raining, which has been quite a task when we haven't had the seasonal staff. So if it's not raining, we are mowing. And when we are not mowing, it is raining. So if you guys need updates on anything particular, just please let me know. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question regarding the management of how we handle the large volume of visitors when it comes to the triathlon. As an example, I was at the triathlon and I was very surprised to see boats with trailers, big trucks with trailers coming down the triathlon path, coming into launch during the triathlon between the hours of 8 and noon on Sunday. It was scary. And so I'm curious to know why we don't direct them out to a different launch, why we don't post on our calendar in January to say from 8 to noon on these dates, we will not allow launching from our park. I know communication, not everyone will go out and look, but some way of managing safety during that point in time with large events such as this. It was very scary, actually.
I appreciate you commenting that too. So we do go through a special events permitting process. All these special events go through each department head for their review and consideration. We haven't considered closing the boat launch before. It can definitely be a requirement of the approval of that special event permit, but it just hasn't been considered as far as closing the boat launch specifically for the triathlon. Okay. So I think it's something I can speak to Chief Schrader as well for enforcement. I know they did have staff on property during that time too. So perhaps for following special event permits, it'll be a requirement of that special event permit, but I'd like his input on it as well.
Yeah, just something to look into. Mm-hmm. It just caught me by surprise.
And we can make it a conditional approval, basically.
Yeah, but how to communicate it? If someone drives a long way, I'm try to be kind and allow them to. They can launch on the north side, but how to make it just a better environment. And this was one example. There may be others that that's not necessary. The way that they're staged, a boat can easily get in and to the launch, and there'd be no problem. This happened to be that the triathlon sat on top of Sandy Beach Road. I mean, they were biking on it at very fast speeds, and there were kids. It was just not a very good safety scene. But by the police enforcement was awesome, and they had phenomenal coverage on all. They had markings. I thought the way that they were directing traffic on 89 at that curve was top notch. It was slow. I mean, I thought the setup was great, except for the access of vehicles with their boats to launch, which just was something I just caught me by surprise, and I wasn't sure if there was a procedure or something that needed to be looked at, or if there was something that we weren't following, but to allow that to happen.
Yep, I just think it's continued conversation with Chief Schrader and myself, and perhaps under review for the special events permits for following years. We make it basically a requirement. So I'd like to talk to him about it and see what it is that we can do.
Any idea off the top of your head how many special events that would mean in a year? Roughly.
I can go back and look. It's very easy to do that. But, I mean, you factor each farmer's market is basically considered a special event, Firefly, Night Market.
But I meant out at,
Sandy
that would
Beach.
involve those boat launches.
Oh, involve the boat launches specifically?
Not many, right?
I can think of 2. We do have 2 triathlons that are scheduled within
Okay.
Sandy Beach within this annual season. So we do have another one that would be approximately,
Okay.
I think it was September.
September.
Something. Yeah. So it was September sometime.
Okay.
In the past, it was just 1 triathlon. This will be the first year tour. There'll be 2. So it could necessitate 2 closures of the boat launch, but like I said, it just hasn't been discussed before as far as closing the boat launch.
If I could just add a comment to that.
Yes, ma'am.
I helped with the registration on Saturday, and there were 700 people registered for that, which I had never really actually gone down when it was going on. That's a lot of people, so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Do we know, is there any conversation with the Department of Natural Resources as to lake access?
That was going to be my next question. I'm not quite sure what the requirement would be. I would think that if it's our property, we can do what it is that we can with it, is my assumption. But I do know that there have been difficulties in closing lake access points before, specifically for special events. This is like Pewaukee area. I've just heard it in passing, but yeah, if it's something that we want to pursue for next year, like I said, I'll just have continued discussions with PD and see what it would be involved, and if it's something we want to pursue.
Is that something we also need to work collaboratively with the town?
To coordinate delineating access points that are approved for that day of launching, I would think so.
Okay.
So it's saying you will see increased, if Sandy Beach were to close, you would see increased public access at both the North Lodge, et cetera. If you're limiting a public access point, therefore the other ones may have substantial more increase.
Yeah.
But
I see our Attorney Daniel Drescher shaking his head no, so.
Yeah, I don't think that's completely accurate. As long as there's an alternative, I believe that we can shut down our launch at
Yeah.
our location.
that's, yeah, I think our
It's
property
local
should be able
control.
to.
The other beaches may be county, there may be policy that's in place. The town has county governance over theirs. I'm fairly confident that we could close the launch at Sandy Beach at will.
Yeah. So
Thank you for that input. I think that'd be important for people to know. That's
Yeah.
why and why we're doing it, and as long as there's other access, we've got our.
And we just, like I said, we just haven't discussed it at this point. I would say at this point, if it's that much of a public safety concern where we've noticed, hey, this boat traffic does conflict with the pedestrian traffic and the triathlon traffic, perhaps it's something, like I said, we have a requirement within the approval of that special event permit that boat launch will be closed to public access. So,
As long as we're talking about this, I just wonder, I was amazed at the number of cars parked on Main Street /89. Was most of that the triathlon people, or was it
I
also
would
a
assume
spillover
so.
from the graduation? No, it was
I would assume
triathlon,
so.
huh?
It's mostly triathlon.
It was
traffic.
triathlon. I completed it, and it was done at noon, and graduation wasn't until 1. It was
okay.
triathlon.
Wow, there was a lot of people.
It was very well attended. I do want to say, I was extremely, so I talked about the security or safety issue that I observed, but I would like to also say how impressed I was. You talk about the amount of rain we've had. Now, there were big puddles, and the bikers had to go through a big puddle to get onto the thing, but hey, everyone had to go through it. So this was like one size fits all. Everyone had to address that was the weather for the weekend. But what I was really impressed, the amount of the leaves were all raked off. So everything was cleaned up as nicely as you could get it in such a short period of time.
Good.
That I felt that it was very well attended by families. There were families everywhere. It was very well attended, and it looked great.
Good.
The setup looked great. So for whatever the team had to do to kind of get it in a place where it was ready to go for that large amount of people for setup, it was well attended too.
Yep.
So
Well, I'm glad to hear
shout
that.
out to the team.
Yep, I'm glad to hear that because we do work with like the event coordinators. What's the best setup? Because we're both trying to provide an opportunity for these people that's best for the actual attendees of the event, but yet also provide park access afterwards of the event as well. And they have been very easy to work with throughout the approval process. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, any other comments with the Parks and Forestry Director's report? The item number 6, public comments, including emails. We have Greg's public comments, so thank you for that regarding the minutes. Any other public comments, emails or otherwise? Yes, Mike.
I was contacted by someone in the paddle ball?
Pickleball?
Pickleball. Obviously, I'm not a player, who appreciates the surface. I think it's a great thing. She was just wondering about whether or not a fence might be included on the sides, citing mostly concerns that kids on bikes and stuff are going to be driving across it, which might impair the surface. But they really like that park a lot.
I've received a bunch of comments as well, especially regarding that project. I mean, we're still at the
Right.
environment's mercy here for actual pouring
Yeah.
concrete footings, but everything's on hand, ready for it to go. It was scheduled for this week to be completed, but with rain, I believe it's going to be postponed for a couple days. Fencing was kind of the next step that was discussed with Rotary Club when they performed the donation for the surfacing. I suppose how that'll move forward, I'm not quite sure yet, but I mean, for the next evolution, if there are going to be continued projects for the pickleball court, fencing seems like the next logical step for it.
Her feeling was that it needn't be as high or as extensive as at the school, which apparently is also like, I don't know, 15
There's-
feet tall or something. She said just 6 feet or
In
5 feet.
Deerfield, there are actually regulation heights for pickleball. I learned a lot of this stuff when I was researching pickleball, but there are regulation size fences for it. And Deerfield does have a regulation court at, I forget what the name of the park is, but it's right off the Glacial Drummond Trail at Deerfield. And they installed just a few courts. I believe it's 4-foot fencing and 6-foot fencing on the perimeters, but that would be a representation of a regulation court.
I'll include a link.
I will.
What was the comment?
I said I would include a link.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, like I said, the next logical step for the development of the project.
Thank you. Any other emails or public comment? If not, let's move to the new business number 8, and that A, finalize a recommendation on the next steps regarding the resolution 2341. What I would ask is we label the items option 2, 3, 4, and 5, because option 2 is the entire surface area, which is this one right here. All right, so that's option 2, and I'm just going to label that.
My apologies. I labeled the attachments.
Yes,
The
I
attachments.
just think just so people are looking at it, they're looking at the same thing. The next one on there is option 3, which is the 50-foot channel. So that's option 3.
It's option 1 then is nothing.
Option 1 is do not.
Right.
Correct. Thank you, Mike. Option 4 is 50-foot channel and total shoreline. So that is this one here. So that is option number 4.
How's that shoreline defined?
We'll get to that in a moment. Okay. And then the option 5 is the 50-foot channel and public shoreline. Public meaning that's owned by this city of Lake Mills. That's option 5.
And these options 4 and 5, is that with the understanding that the 50-foot channel is a depth of 4 feet, but the circle or the area in front of the public areas is a depth of 3 feet? Wasn't that your...
That's correct.
Okay.
That was
Those
discussed
are
last
the
meeting.
cost estimates.
Right.
And I'm sorry, but I didn't hear that. There are cost estimates, and they do delineate the costs. I mean,
Right.
the depth,
Okay.
right?
Yep.
on the
Not just
cost.
confirming that that's
Yes.
what we're talking.
So the intent behind these drawings as well, we discussed several options at the last Parks Board meeting, and we discussed a couple potential hybrid options as well. All these are, is they are not to scale or accurate or anything. It's
Right.
purely a GIS overlay, but it's just to provide a visual representation of what those 4 proposed options were.
So if we could just back up a minute, because I wasn't sure I heard. So, and I was wondering too, when I looked at the pictures, so options 4 and 5, there is a section with the 3 feet, right, on both of those two?
Red.
Right, okay, thank you.
And I just delineated them by color. So
Okay.
the orange would be the 50-foot
Red is
channel to a
3.
depth of 4
Yeah.
feet.
This is 4.
Red would be the shoreline dredging to a depth of 3 feet.
Okay.
Thank you. Did that answer your question as to how we define shoreline? Okay. So what is the question regarding how shoreline is defined?
Is shoreline depth of water, is it geological marker, is it really short?
Currently proposed, and this is at the discretion of Parks Board as far as how much we want to dredge beyond it, is basically 50 feet from, I suppose, normal regular watermark would be my understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, we did discuss it all that much last meeting as well, but the general understanding was 50 feet from normal watermark.
And that blue line, does that indicate the normal watermark, the blue line, which is the blue line indicating?
Yep.
Oh, very good, that's just a
Yep.
question.
Blue line is a normal watermark delineation.
Okay.
And that's a survey line on the GIS layer.
That's consistent with what I'm considering.
Yeah, yep.
The cost estimate was based on just measurement off of Google Maps, wherever the water line was there.
Yep.
So estimate, as we
Yeah, no problem.
mentioned.
There might be some benefit of removing some of the invasive water lilies, because I have some of those in that space on my property. perhaps an upside to that. Thank you.
Right. If the people that have come in now, if you are going to make a comment, we would ask you to go to the podium so your voice can be heard. Also, there is a sign-in sheet with your name and address, if you would please do that. So, so moving forward, these are the options, and you heard option one, which is do nothing, is not presented. It'd be as is. But do we have any recommendations as to our next steps regarding these options that are presented? Yes, Mary. McCray. Sorry.
Okay,
No, you go first.
No,
Okay.
you leaned in first.
I was thinking maybe we, with narrowing this down, just start eliminating individual alternatives that we've selected. Or
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure if there's another way
Mary?
anyone wants
Well,
to.
I would like to, I brought this up at our last meeting, I would just like to make sure we have written and articulated a very clear set of clarity of what problem we're trying to solve, what opportunity we're trying to create. Some get a really clear set of sentences to actually define what it is. So then our solution should be able to achieve those, and we understand how much are we willing to pay for it, how are we going to pay for it. I'm really still, I'm a very analytical person, and I went through and I created some charts of trying to understand the problems and the solutions. So I jumped in at the dredge, but I don't understand why we're dredging. So I'm stuck with a little bit of, and so why I'm dredging in 3 different places now, and I can backtrack to why, but I don't know that we have come to conclusion, or that's written anywhere in all of the minutes and all of the documents, specifically a set of words that describe what it is we're trying to solve. And I would like to start there, because I think the solutions should then follow after we understand, that we're all in agreement of what it is we're trying to solve together. Other than we're trying to solve where to dredge, but I don't know why I'm dredging, or we're dredging.
I would say that would come down to the formation of your final recommendation as well within your language. So that'd be a good place to start, I would think.
And I think that will help the DNR also to understand what is the rationale for which we have an interest in upsetting the ecosystem that exists in the mill pond. And so that would be helpful if we could just make sure we have that articulated well, or if it's somewhere that you have stated and I haven't found it, I can catch up quick with a quick read of something, but I'm not sure I was able to find.
If I could, I'll try my best at summarizing. Or
Sure. I think we've got. Wants to speak.
Mr. Jones does have a comment.
My name is Charles Zuntz. I went to Foundation, Lake Mills Foundation. We have a piece of land, a couple members of my family, and we have without surveying it, I'd say a 14-acre woodlot that at this point in time is within the sanitary sewer district, but is not in the city limits. But we were trying to look forward with that property of turning it into a park for the community based on, as you know, I live south of town, and that eventually will all be houses, I assume. I don't know. None of us know. But I can't get a response from the optimist, or not optimist, but the foundation, if they can take a donation like that, because of all the tax ramifications and all that stuff that goes on. And I think it kind of got lost in the wind. So when I saw you were meeting here tonight, I didn't think I'd get here on time, but it's something that you might want to consider. You can pull it up on websites or whatever. It's south of town, and it's S&C of Jefferson County is the address of it. The total property is actually about 49 acres. Some of it's workland, a lot of it's a woodlot. My sister lives in Milwaukee, and she sees these types of things being added to the Milwaukee development process as part of the community as it moves along. And I'm just making you aware of it. I don't know where they're at with the rules and ramifications of state law, but we've made an approach, and we're waiting for somebody to respond. But it's long. I consider it long-range planning for the community, not short-range. S&C of Jefferson County. S and C of Jefferson County. Okay? Any questions or?
Yes, I apologize for ignorance. What is the foundation?
The Lake Mills Community Foundation?
Oh, okay.
I donated, for instance, I donated $5,000 to it just recently to buy the new fish tank for the FFA Aqua Center. Made other community donations in the past. I got them a tree school where you grow internal plants out of a tree. Different things that are innovative and change and educational. And of course, the land out on the south end of town was given to the school district years ago for a potential school site. So families always been involved in long-range planning, and this is a long-range plan. So that's all I have to say. If you ever have any questions, contact me. Most of the people in town know me. Sure, go ahead. What street is it on?
Unsafe lanes.
Unsafe. Well, it's actually off of a combination of 89, Highway 89, and Mud Lake Road doesn't bump into it, but other of our properties bump into it.
I say, where is it in relation to the church?
Which church? Oh, it's south, well south. Somebody's good here with technology. Like I say, it's a distant project, but I think the community needs to look in the distance, not so much nearby.
Yes, and I would think that the city planners and the other parties that are working as we're expanding, it should definitely be added to that as a.
Yeah. Just so you know ahead of time that I'm approached at least 3 times a month by developers from anywhere from California to New York that want to buy land to build houses on, and I'm pretty stubborn.
Good thing.
Thanks.
Thank you for your generosity. Thanks for being here.
You bet.
Anybody else have questions as to where and such? All right. Any other ones? Then let's.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have a proposal one is to delineate why and such from Mary.
Well, it's not for me. I think it's important we have written down as a Parks Board what are our objectives. What are we trying to achieve? I think it should be crystal clear that we have to explain to the public what it is we're doing and why. I'm not sure we all would explain the same why together, and I think it's really important.
Okay. I do not remember what the background as to with the Strand report and the recommendations that came in, what the bigger, deeper, no pun intended, as to their proposals and their recommendations for access to downtown and such. So I would defer to somebody that might know more about the genesis of the 2018 proposal. That had to be driven by somebody's want or need.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, if the Parks Board has been assigned with looking at the preservation, the actual maintenance activities and development of the mill pond, that's the current resolution that you're trying to solve.
Yes.
That's this one here.
Yep, and if you could start at that point, what would be the maintenance aspect of it? What are you trying to maintain? Are you trying to maintain habitat? Are you trying to maintain recreational access? Are you trying to maintain motorboat access? I think that's, as we go through these dredging options and you start forming your final recommendation, I agree with Mary. What led you to your final recommendation out of these options, or none of these options, or whatever? But what is the problem that you guys are trying to solve? Some of the things that I've noticed, and I can reiterate just from some of the conversations, are Dredging could improve public shoreline fishing access. It could improve private homeowner access to the piers, and then it could also improve the amount of navigability from the boat launch on Veterans Lane to Ferry Drive. So those are some of the three larger arcing reasons for dredging that I believe we discussed. If there's any further ones, by all means, let me know.
The fire department access was not in the top three, but it was sidelined.
It was an option listed
Yep.
as well. Yep.
So say them again. Make sure.
And like I said, this is my
That's what I
understanding
had,
of the
based on
discussions.
what we've discussed,
Yep,
that's what
so-
I had as what I would say are the problems or opportunities.
Yep, so I would say
Both traffic.
increased navigability, and that would be both in the form of boat access from the launch to Ferry Drive, as well as boat access around the mill pond and for improved access for property owners. So there's different aspects of motorboat access, some of which are reflected in the options here. I mean, with the 50-foot channel, that would just specifically be from the boat launch to Ferry Drive. But with one of the other options, it does improve motorboat access or navigability for the homeowners on the north side of the mill pond. One of the justifications for dredging along the public shoreline is increased amount of public shoreline fishing. That was one of the things we had discussed. So recreational development. So I would say the overarching aspect of it would be recreational improved access.
And I will try to get a why and then what we pondered. So I'm going to go back to option 2, which was to dredge the entire surface area per strand at various levels. But that was for navigability and for access for the property owners, access for the boaters, and anyone that was using. So that was the entire dredging. Surface area only was that. People have been on that's option 2, entire surface area. It's also the most expensive. The next option on there, which is option 3, which is the 50-foot channel. From my recollection, it was to have access from, as Eric said, from the boat launch by the fire department or by the city to the bridge or under the bridges at Ferry Drive. And width is going to be more of a standard, and depth, again, standard for long-term accessibility. One of the things that would happen if that is the choice, you have the landowners, the property owners that are on the mill pond would not have any improvement or change in their current reality as to their launchability, usability of the mill pond. I'll get a little more details, but that's kind of a high level. If anybody has different thoughts, just please add. I'm now going to option 4, the 50-foot channel and total shoreline. And that is same reason for the channel. The reason for doing the total shoreline is because access to people from the city to fish off of city property and launch personal watercraft, canoes, kayaks, stand-up paddleboards. It would also give access to the business owners, such directly would be your VFW and your Sunshine Brewery, but anybody that would take your place. Also, it would then improve the accessibility of the property owners for the people on the mill pond. The other advantage of that option was that, my understanding from presentations, the DNR allows you to build a pier out to where you can launch a boat at 2.5 feet. So I think we agreed we didn't want to have property owners having to put out 100-foot piers, and plus lots of other reasons, for coming all the way around.
Just for clarification, I believe it's noted as 3 feet in the ordinance, in the DNRs, it's 3 feet.
Okay, thank you. So that was the reason for that. The other reason for it around the shoreline and leaving others is we wanted to be cognizant of the current animals, fish and
Ecology.
turtles and such that were in the different parts of the mill pond. So we were trying to be aware and protecting the sensitive nature of the mill pond. So that was option 4. And option number 5, which is the 50-foot channel and public shoreline. So again, these would be things that would give visitors and residents to the city access for fishing and launching, so they could access both Rock Lake, but also access the mill pond itself. And that was the reason for the public shoreline. And again, all these costs are delineated, and that's where that is.
Tim, can I, just to go back to the beginning, I think when you said why the dredging, I think we all are proceeding under the assumption that if there is nothing done, basically that mill pond is silted in and filled up rather rapidly over the last several years to the point where it is not accessible for the vast majority of the public.
Yeah.
Not just riparian owners, but people trying to launch boats from the fire department landing there have difficulty, and I think that was at least my impression. Is that?
Yeah, directly from the resolution from City Council was to
That's why that.
meet the needs of the community. And during, I guess, all of the public comment we received, whether it's via email or when we had in January, I believe, the public hearing, I believe I can summarize as everyone had concerns about access. So I think as far as, kind of documenting the why, directly.
What specifically, what kind of access?
So there's different reasons. We had landowners with concerns of not being able to utilize their piers anymore. Some of the public comments were simply for kayak paddleboard access to the mill pond. There was, I think, some public fishing or shoreline fishing perspectives. I'm not sure what else I'm missing here, but
I would say based on public input, those are the perceived problems of the people who've approached both Parks Board and myself. Here's the issue that we're experiencing. We would like to see it improved. Is generally how it's brought to us.
Yes. So to your point, I don't think we ever put that down in writing. Besides just all the public comments we received, but I believe that's we've been targeting the needs of the community as far as the mill pond through those public comments.
The other thing that was done was the actual dredging of the channel, that channel underneath the bridges.
Yes.
That's just from the lake to basically the edge of the bridge.
You're correct.
Yes, and that was
Correct.
completed.
Yes, exactly. But that, at times when they do the drawdowns, you were not able to get almost any kind of boat through that channel. And people that live on the mill pond or live on the lake that wanted to use to get into the mill pond were not able to, because it would be end of August, September. There was times you could not use that channel. So that was another reason for the decision by the city to dredge that channel, to my knowledge. And when I say channel, that's underneath the culvert, or whatever you want the real term is. So thank you.
I will say that the channel reached the point of non-navigability. It was no longer navigable for watercraft, whether it be non-motorized or otherwise. So the goal was to restore navigability for both motorboats and non-motorized watercraft.
And other experts could speak to this as to one of the reasons for the depth that was selected is long-term. It would last a lot longer. If 4 feet is going to last X amount of years. Also, as far just for things that have been done to help with the navigability, and you've heard this, is that the city has used a heavier grain or a larger grain of sand that is hopefully going to lessen the amount that shifts over to that area. So this period, and to my understanding, that has worked as best we can tell.
We've put less sand down the past couple of years, so.
So, not going to where it was going. Mary, you had a comment?
Well, I have a lot of comments, but let me stick with the dredging one regarding the evidence on how confident we are that any of the dredging scenarios will have what kind of longevity, what kind of, I don't know enough about, I reviewed and listened to the ecology of the mill pond, Patricia Cicero's presentation, but it didn't talk about, it talked about all the different types of things in here, the plants and whatnot, and do we have any understanding about any evidence that would suggest if we were to dredge in 2024 or 2025 upon getting all the permits, probably 25 or 6, what the outlook is for how long the dredge will be amenable, will be for the riparian owners, or even for the center is different. I see that the Eric, you had shown how the water is flowing. You could see the, I don't know, you call it sand swipe, I guess, when you can see the direction of the water. But all of the other, I guess part of the mill pond that doesn't have as active of movement. Have we talked about? Do we know anything about what this?
You're saying basically the longevity of sustained air. It's like if you were to pull that material out, how long will it take to basically return to non-navigability where it is now?
Yes, do these plants spread fast? Or when you upset the bottoms of lakes or garden, all new stuff starts growing in there. And so how do we have any indication of how fast something would change? Or
briefly discuss those things, but I think that is without doubt the largest variable that we're going to come up against.
One of the risks.
Yep,
Okay.
that is absolutely the largest variable in my opinion. Now, if we look at the late 90s, the latest evidence that I have of at least dredging the channel, I'm specifically saying the channel, was 1997.
Oh, okay.
So if that gives you any scope as far as understanding how long it could take for an area to go from clear and accessible to non-navigable, that's what I've been using a bit as my benchmark. But I think that's going to be our largest variable. You're going to have different amounts of decaying matter that builds up to different amounts of silt. You're going to have varying levels of water flow within that mill pond. I'm not an ecologist or hydrologist, so I'm not quite sure. But that's definitely going to be our largest what if. How long is this going to last? I'm not quite sure. And that was the reasoning behind going to a deeper dredge material than a shallower one. Yes. I don't want to speak on your behalf, but I think that's the general understanding.
That's knowledge, that's information. Not being a hydrologist, not being a person that knows how things move. The fact that there's not an awful lot of water moving on the surface of the mill pond because of its location and such.
It's called a mill pond.
What's that?
It's called a mill pond for a reason. Mill pond is by definition is a still, more of a still body. That's by definition.
And Eric and some others have done some research as to when the mill pond was actually made for the mill. It was designed to be able to have an X amount of water flow. But again, all that is sort of difficult to determine exact numbers and depths and how long it took before it got redone.
Yeah, I think it's generally safe to say the more material that's removed, the longer it will be until we're having this discussion again when navigability is lost.
That's fair.
I have a question. Is this live?
Yep, it is an area.
Okay, it's not amplified. All right. So let's just say, we're talking 20 to 25 years, best case scenario, that this would be effective, right? Generally, maybe a little longer, 20 to 30 years. So this might be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. In the event that the wastewater treatment facility is moved in that period of time, how does that impact, or how would it potentially impact this, or would it?
I don't think it would. In regards to, you're saying the outflow of the dam itself to sustain that, or what?
The requirement to maintain Stony Creek as an adequate body of water that the wastewater treatment plant currently empties into.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question. I know that the DNR has classified Stony Creek as navigable, and that must be maintained. The source of that is Rock Lake and the Mill Pond. So I'm sure there is some burden. The wastewater treatment plant does add additional requirements with regard to maintaining flow. I'm not sure, I cannot talk about how that interaction would persist or not persist in the event that the wastewater treatment plant is no longer located on Stony Creek. That's a decent question.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hadn't considered that.
Okay.
It is defined as a navigable body of water, and you would endeavor to maintain that. You would be required to endeavor to maintain that. At what capacity or what limits, I don't have a statement. Nice.
Now, that's the DNR's requirement, Dan, right? That
Yeah.
Yes, that's state required.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. And if we don't, maybe we can research that, what the current, like, fences are for that, minimum of X flow per cubic, cubic foot per whatever, to the maximum, whatever they want to maintain, and what those sources are. Do we know, anyone, does waste, does that alter much as far as the amount of water that they're putting into the Stony Creek?
It's fairly uniform.
Yeah, so I figured so much.
I mean, the amount of outflow from the dam itself will require to have a minimum discharge, but then it varies on actual water levels itself. So that is a change.
But Dan answered the question. I would think that the wastewater was pretty standard. Thank you.
So my thoughts are, if you could define, like Mary stated, what you are trying to solve by recommending one of these options, and perhaps go through the positives and negatives of each proposed option, and perhaps further critiquing of each option from there, so you can form a final recommendation.
Well, and I'm going to go, thank you for that, Eric. I'm going to go back to recommendations for citizen and city goals for the uses, maintenance, and preservation of the mill pond. So I believe it is our base is that we want to make the use of this as big as possible. And that's one of the reasons that for some of the recommendations that we're making. The other thing, as far as the maintenance of that, we also wanted to make sure that if it was dredged at a point, that it would maintain that way for as long as is feasible. And that's going to be, a big part of this also. And also go back to the use, the citizens that live on the mill pond, that they would help for them also, including the businesses. And then again, the preservation. Preservation right now, in that parts of this are sensitive areas, and what we've done as far as the kind of sensing of this, both depths and water types and fish and other animals in here, we also, as best we can, preserve those also. So that was sort of our trifecta of goals. The other thing that I believe we've worked diligently on is in the costs. So it's kind of it is a cost-benefit analysis, and that's another reason for the different options. Any other input?
If I could answer the question that you posed probably 15 minutes ago, and then we started asking questions, or I got us on the objective discussion, is you asked the question, which one of these would you throw out? Let's start with eliminating. I think that was when
That was
you were
McCrae's
trying to get us there.
But that was McCrae, our engineer here, and our water expert. So.
Right. So I would like to propose that, given if the top three are maximize use of mill pond, help the citizens on the mill pond, and preservation as much as possible, I feel strongly that option 2, entire surface, does not meet the preservation as much as possible objective. And I think that would cause the most disruption, and I'm, first of all, 3.1 million, I would have a hard time supporting. I think if we were spending 3.1 million, we're willing to go for that money. I have a lot of ideas that would benefit 6,000 citizens of Lake Mills and not 10% of Lake Mills, because 10% of people own boats in the state of Wisconsin. We're the third or fourth highest boat population state, which is quite fascinating, but only 10% is not a large number of people that we're serving by putting money into the mill pond. So I'm looking at the population for the amount of investment. And so I would say that doing the entire surface, 3.1, does not meet two big objectives in my viewpoint, and so I would eliminate option 2 as a starting point.
Thank you for that, Mary. And just for process, and so as we're kind of talking through this, if McCray or someone has, what was the projected cost of the option 2?
It was in the 3 million.
3.1.
Yeah.
3.1 million for that's option 2, which is entire surface area. All right.
Yep.
So that is make that. Do we have it for option 3? What was the 50-foot channel only option?
450,000.
Sorry.
I'm sorry?
450.
$450,000. All right.
For the 50-foot channel, 450.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Looking at the 50-foot channel and public shoreline, which is option, let's stay with the same one. That's option 4. Let's go to option 4. 50-foot channel and total shoreline.
840,000.
840,000. All right, thank you.
Which seems interesting because the shoreline is larger than the channel itself, but the 3-foot depth, I think, has a difference in the cost.
That is.
So if you look at that, just for someone who's looking at that, you have to know. Yeah, it's the color, the lovely color difference in the exhibit. That was a good idea, Eric. That is the reason why. Otherwise, you might not think the math it looks right.
Yep.
Correct.
Volume is key when it comes to actual removed materials.
Yes. So thank you for that. And then option 5, the cost of that.
That was 3 foot deep, or the 50-foot channel, and the 3 foot deep along the public shoreline is 633.
633.
Yeah.
3. Okay.
I may have rounded. We can. Did I
No,
just say
35.
6?
These are all rough.
Okay.
635.
They're
Yeah.
kind of rough. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
And I will once again throw on the asterisks that those are very rough estimates, and that as Eric did the research, the cost could be reduced if we implemented some sort of beneficial reuse.
Yep, you're correct.
I don't know if we can really estimate how much very accurately the cost would be reduced, but it could be reduced.
Yep, and again, these are approximations from inflation calculators as well, perceived similar projects for costs, so it's not specifically for this project. What is this project going to cost? It is still a variable, but these are giving you ballpark numbers.
Can I ask another cost question? Are we talking about dredging?
Sure.
I learned about something called the Wisconsin Waterways Commission channel dredging policy. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not, no.
So if you dredge, you'd have to look at make sure to see if this qualified. But if you dredge 5 feet, 25 feet on either side of a path to get to a waterway, there's some criteria on here, and I think we might fit it for at least the channel dredge, that you can qualify for financial aid, eligible funds, through the Wisconsin Waterways Commission channel dredging policy.
Sponsored from the state?
From the state.
Okay.
And so it was interesting because
So
I'll give this to you, or I can
And I
send
normally
it to you,
refer
but
to
it's
these
kind of
as-
interesting. We're talking about dollars. I'm always trying to find ways that if we're moving this direction, that you can.
So normally
that
how I
might
refer to
mitigate.
these is stewardship funds is normally what I refer to them as. They could be a myriad of things. Are they specific for navigable waterways? Are they specific for habitat development? Stewardship would basically be the overarching term for potential grant funding. A project like this, there absolutely would be any and available grant funding opportunities that we would apply for, or be applicable
Okay.
for, would be applied for.
Okay, well, here's what
But
I
yes,
found. I was
finding
dredging,
one
and I'm like, oh, it's 5 feet deep. Oh,
that-
we only have 4, but if we went 5,
Assist.
would it be worth the assistance might be
Absolutely.
worth going, a foot deeper? And so I was trying to, I'm going to throw that on the table as
Yes.
just an earmark of something that we don't have to have the decision today, but might be
Yep.
of interest to pursue when we talk to city council
Absolutely.
about going after,
Well, thank you, I
additional
appreciate that.
funds.
Is that something, Eric, you think you could get sort of an idea before we were to make a recommendation to the city council?
Well, it would only be applicable if you were to dredge to a depth of 5 feet, but at this point, I
Okay,
I
so
would
it
have
has
no
to be
idea.
5 feet.
Yes.
That does, yeah.
It-
But what I
according
would
to
say
this.
is, the way that I would kind of apply for that is, if we were to pursue this project, of course, it has to go through the permitting stages and everything else as well. I can say, if we were to actually move forward to a depth of 5 feet on the condition that we receive this grant, I believe we could have that discussion at that time.
Yeah. I just think it's just to put on as something to look into action. I don't think it's
Any
material,
information-
but
any
I thought I'd
information
bring
that
it up
helps.
to make this.
Yeah, so it could be a-
Fire, such
Try to
is
get
good.
these
Thank you for
costs
finding
down.
that, Mary. And you found that where?
In the Wisconsin, I was all over the Wisconsin DNR sites trying to
Okay.
learn more about
Thank
this mill pond scenario, and I came into this dredging policy.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes.
I'd like to circle back to Mayor's proposal about eliminating option 2, right? I could second that. I have concern about the cost difference between that option versus the other options. And the concerns that Colton and Patricia have brought up as far as the natural ecology of the lake, of the mill pond. My understanding, if we dredge the entire mill pond, that would kind of clean the slate and we'd be starting basically from scratch again. And that was one of the specific items that the resolution from City Council wanted us to address. And I don't know if, I guess it's my opinion, that dredging the entire mill pond would neglect that request to maintain the natural resources of the mill pond.
In the sensitive areas. And so when we're saying about Patricia and Colton, these are people that are part of the Jefferson County water,
Land and water
land and water
conservation.
conservation area. So that was their input, so thank you for bringing that up.
And-
Yes, Adina.
Oh, I thought we were going down the line.
Yes,
But we
indeed.
forgot Mike.
I just jumped
Okay,
in.
okay, well, I would actually echo what Marion McGray said, because of the fact that one of the things that Colton said last time when he was presenting, I think it was to us, I've been to so many meetings, I know he talked about Eurasian foil or whatever that
Milfoil.
is.
Eurasian
Yeah,
milfoil.
that could potentially increase if there's too much dredging. So we don't want that for sure, because that's rampant as it is. And then the other sensitive, plants and wildlife. So I would take number 2 off the table, in my opinion. And the cost, thank you.
Just as an aside, Mike, there is that link of the Eurasian water milfoil in your minutes. And so that maybe one maybe make as an attachment, because again, sometimes the links aren't accessible. So you
Okay.
can maybe add that as a,
Anything I would just print out and put as
Yeah.
so it doesn't bugger up the
right, exactly. So I mean, just so they're aware, they can get to that. The idea of what it is and why it's important. I will echo what other people have said. Someone's got a little time to do math. And how many citizens do we have in the city of Lake Mills right now? Is it 6,500 and some?
That's
Approximately.
Close
yeah.
enough.
And so if we project growth, whatever, we're looking at about 7,000 people to maybe more. So if we do the math, $3.1 million divided by 6,500 is how much per
Notice
person
you're looking at the engineer.
amortized over whatever, 25 years. How much are we talking about?
Judging from my palpitations, it's significant. Judging from my palpitations, it's significant. That's a visceral response.
I just think that as long as we're looking at math and long-term, so people are making decisions, this is what the impact is going to be potentially on you. That's, I think, helpful.
7,000 citizens.
$500.
No, it's 500 versus, but again, if we amortize that over 25 years, how long it would last, that's also math. So, but I would agree that we could take option number 2 off the issue because of all the issues that have been, or all the factors that have been discussed.
You've been quiet over there.
Unusually so. No, I agree. And I would reemphasize, I think, what Colton and others have said, that when you dredge, and that might be part of the problem, going down to 5 feet, you're taking out the basal layer of the more perennial native plants, and what happens under the water is the same thing that happens in your garden. When you strip it clean, guess what's going to come in? Not the good stuff. It's going to be the bad stuff that comes back faster. So I think leaving that center island may alleviate some of the DNR concerns, and we're fulfilling the city council's direction to try to maintain the ecology of that space. So I agree.
All right.
2 is off.
So might we have a motion to eliminate option 2, entire surface area?
So moved.
Second?
All right. Everyone in favor of eliminating option 2, which is entire surface area dredging?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right. So option 2 is taken away as a potential recommendation for the city council resolution. Moving forward.
Excuse me, Tim, just to be clear, so we're voting against them accepting it, but we're still presenting it to them as an option, or we're not presenting it as an option?
I think our goal is we're going to come down to one preferred option.
Recommended option.
Yep, you're going to say.
One recommendation for the city council.
And not delineate the other options that we considered. I'm not arguing, I'm
Make a
just
note
wondering.
that we just, we
Yeah,
looked
you
at
could-
5 and
yep.
decided on this one is the best foot forward. I think it's
Mary's correct. Yep.
Yes.
Say this is what we chose on, this is our justifications behind it, and you can absolutely list the other options that were available,
Yes.
but ultimately you have to come to one.
Yes.
Right,
Is there
okay.
detail in the original ordinance that suggests they want options or not options?
The resolution.
The resolution exists, yes.
It was from, I believe it just said short and long-term plans. Recommendation for short and long-term plans. I guess it didn't specifically.
If you don't tell us, people will probably ask, so.
Well, no, and we will, and
This is what else you
yes, we could do that, and McCray brings up a very good point. Right now, we are talking specifically short-term, what we think that would be best for the city and citizens of Lake Mills. Long-term, that could be bridge changing and such, but that's beyond this initial
Yeah.
deal.
Ultimately, yeah, if you go back to the city council resolution, I mean, it's the city council is asking for the Parks Board for your collective recommendation.
Yes, yes. And I believe, maybe I'm speaking, I just think that the numbers that are involved, the money and the why. All right, so thank you for that. All right, I am now moving to options. We got 3, which is the 50-foot channel only, leaving the rest as it is presently, with the depth, various depths from 6 inches to maybe 4 feet, and different pockets of that. So that's what that is all about. Option 4 is the dredging at 4 feet and the entire shoreline, both city and privately owned. That's option 4 are still, and option 5, which is the 4-foot channel and a 3-foot shoreline dredging, is option 5. So on this one, any comments?
Option 1 is still on the table, but I would
Thank you.
be feasible to propose removing that option. All of the public comment we received was at least in some form of dredging, with maybe one exception that the gentleman brought up concerns about the costs of dredging, but at that point we had whittled down different options. But I would propose to remove option 1 from consideration.
Just to be fair to other comments, it was brought up that if we did nothing, that would then make almost by default motorized watercraft would not be able to use the mill pond.
True.
So that would make it accessible to watercraft that was either propelled by sail or propelled by a human, which was put out there as not beyond the realm of someone that people would want. So
I don't know that it would, at this rate, that would even be accessible to people on, for instance, you have a 6 or 8 inch fin on your stand-up paddleboard and that. I've seen people try to get through there. I don't know that you'd be getting through there if you don't do anything for a while with anything.
Thank you for the try. I'm just bringing up, that was brought up as another output of doing nothing. It wasn't like we were taking out everybody's wishes. So I wanted to
think what Craig is insinuating that you're going to do something in one of the other plans, therefore you could eliminate that, but if you do nothing, you will have a problem.
Yes, that was the point I was trying to raise.
Now, I think you might have to put your name and such as that comment up there, young man. If you would, please. So, do we have a motion to eliminate one as an option, which is to do nothing?
I'm not sure if there's more discussion that other members want to bring up at this point.
We can make the motion, then discuss, and then discuss it.
Okay, well, I'll make the motion.
All right, so we have a motion to select the do nothing option, leave it as is.
Remove it from consideration.
To remove from consideration.
I'll second that.
All right. Do we have vote on ayes?
Or discuss it first?
I would like to discuss.
All right.
So I will support removing the elimination of option 1. And that is because I am taking the liberty to define on my own the word maximize use of the mill pond. That can be a lot, using the mill pond can be described in a lot of different ways. So non-motorized boats is a use of the mill pond. And just kayaks is a use of the mill pond. And so I think it's important, I'm going back to my comment, that we are crystal clear on the specific objective. And so I think we are really saying we want to maximize the use of small motor craft and other motor craft. Something, because it's different, the use, maximize the use. It is a 6-acre parcel. It's not a place where people are driving. They don't come specifically to Lake Mills to go to the mill pond. They come to Lake Mills to go on Rock Lake. And so I appreciate we're trying to maximize the use. I think I want to be really specific. If we're spending this kind of money, that we want to make sure that we really can define how our citizens are going to be able to use it. And so I will support no dredging, but that means we are saying that we want navigability, how do you say that word?
You got it.
Navigability with engines or with motors, small motors right now, because we have the whole bridge situation. But I think it's really important that we're really specific on defining what that means. Because this is a lot of money, and if we're talking about maximized system, we have 10% are using boats, and now we have fewer than 10% are using boats with motor, these types of motors and size that can get under the bridge. And so today, for what we're just on the short term, that I think we need to really make sure we're clear there.
And that is 100% valid, absolutely, for sure. But I mean, there are noted or recognized recreation or forms of recreation that people are doing out there that we're trying not to limit as well, or that at least have been discussed. So I know we talked briefly about carp fishermen who do go into the mill pond with motorboats to bullfish carp.
And it's a motorboat. So I'm
that
good.
is,
I'm good.
yep,
It's a
that
motorboat.
That is a motorboat. Yep.
So that's, I think, specific use, maximize use of the mill pond. I think just specific that we're okay with. We're looking for motorboats as use, as part of the use definition. I think that's important because otherwise it's.
I don't know.
Because you talked about pedal boards.
Well, yeah.
Pedal.
Anybody that has that fin, trying to go through that, gets shallow enough, trying to get through those weeds, and I've done it. It's difficult to do. You get stuck. So I don't know that we should be saying that we're only interested in getting increased motor vehicles in there. And I understand where you're coming from, but I would have to respectfully disagree. I think we're trying to make it accessible, in my opinion, to everyone. And I think we do nothing.
Then we should list what all of those things are, such as paddle boards. I don't think jet skis are intended in here. It's going to be no wake. I don't think it's going to have possibly the clearance, and maybe people would be okay going in there with their jet skis. I don't know, but I just think that clarifying what we intend that to be used for is going to be important.
So what I'm saying increasing accessibility, I guess I'm considering all user groups. I don't think, it was kind of my opinion, we shouldn't be limiting, deciding which user groups are more important, or what this is targeted at.
The widest
why
possible
shouldn't we?
recreational audience.
We can't be everything to everybody. We're not going to stick sailboats underneath there.
That is true.
We're not going to put pontoons underneath there, or somebody with a 300 motor with a small. Like, it's not for everyone, and I think I'm worried that we are not thinking about. We should be intentional. This 6-acre parcel has got a purpose. So what is the purpose? And let's make sure we darn well design it right and spend the money to get the purpose fulfilled. And I'm thinking our purpose is still. We are wanting it to be everything to everybody, and I don't think we can afford to make it everything for everybody for today and the future, given its size and where it fits with all of the other priorities and interests we have in the city. And that's all my comment is. I want to be specific so people can say, oh, I get it. We are really maximizing fishing in here and quiet paddling in here because it's going to be no wake. We're going to maximize fishing from shore in here because we're going to make more access points for citizens. Someday, I actually would like to see a big boardwalk instead of raising the bridge. Why can't we put a boardwalk from the firehouse all the way to Sandy Beach as a walking path to get downtown? And so people can park their boat over by to Bartles Beach and walk over. That's a different idea. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm just still trying to make sure that the use is specific and clear so that we don't dredge for something that we don't intend to dredge it for. It's a lot of money. I think we need to be clear. I'm sorry. I said that a million times.
So thank you. Yes, name please and address.
Andy Palmer, 326 West Lake Street. I've lived on the mill pond since 1997, and I think I can share a few experiences that perhaps can provide some insights. You made a couple of key comments that I thought were interesting, but I think should be part of the purpose of this team. One, we are trying to create more of a destination. You said the mill pond is not a place where people come. It is, in fact, where people come. Paddle boarders, jet skiers, yes, they are going to use the lake, but they are using the pond to get there. That is a critical feature of the mill pond, getting from the landing to the lake. Yes, there are restrictions. They certainly understand that. Part of the restriction is the weeds, is the depth. As our secretary so appropriately pointed out, if you watch, and I do daily, people navigating the mill pond on paddle boards or on kayaks, there's an area that they use. The area that they use is the area that's being kept clear by the motorboats. So the reason we're not using it as much as we can is because it's restricted by the natural features that it has today. And I appreciate the diligent discussion. But as a landowner and as somebody who sees that as a true asset for the community, long-term, whether that is a boardwalk, whether that is a larger bridge, bringing people off the lake, the mill pond has and serves a variety of features for the community. The conversations that we're having we're hitting on the right things. Yes, cost is a part of that. I would argue a little bit with your 10% because we're not just talking about boats. We are talking about just about everything that goes on the water that goes through the pond. So, and the challenges over the course of the last 20 years are fairly consistent, and that is the access is limited. And I would be happy to have a conversation in any forum about how I use the mill pond and how I see others use the mill pond. This discussion is taking the right steps to address mitigating the changes that have happened in the mill pond over the course of the last 20 years. And I do believe that dredging is a key part of making it, continuing its success, continuing its legacy with the natural aspects, the access aspects, and the additional use for the city and patrons for fishing and use that way.
Greg Hagman, 204 West Woodland Drive. So I don't know how many of you have lived in town for how long, but I grew up on the mill pond. I started by living on Main Street next to what was then the Sinclair station, right across from the Texaco station. And at that point in time, the city had 21 boathouses along the shoreline right by the fire station that wrapped around from the boat landing over to the culvert. They were rented out with a very, very long waiting list. I know that because my father was absolutely dedicated to getting us one of the boathouses. He wanted his boys to be able to get on the lake, and we didn't live on the lake. At that point in time, and Mary, to your point, if you want to delineate absolutely every use that could be done, we used to launch our raft, our hand-built raft, from that landing, and we used to raft around, and we used to raft out to the lake. So you can add hand-built rafts to it. I mean, it's how far you want to go with it. I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it, but lots of uses. I also know that at that point in time, that boat landing was used constantly, partly because Sandy Beach boat landing fees were strictly enforced, which I don't know that they're not now, but I have a feeling they're not. I know that admission isn't. So, I've watched that decrease dramatically over the years, mostly because you can't get, there's very few boats that you can launch in there. I watched a duck boat get launched the other day. I don't live on the pond anymore, but I'm down in the area. And it's a flat boat, flat bottom boat, and that's what was able to get in there. But that's about all I see. So in terms of access to the lake, for lots of people, for the kids that live, for the families that live on Main Street, that might have a boat in their garage or might have something that they want to do, or anywhere around there, that access is necessary, or you can't get there. Otherwise, you got to drive up to the north end, or it was a convenience. It was a great convenience, and it was a luxury for a small town to have 3 boat launches in town. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments regarding what we've heard to this point?
We're still on option 1, whether or not.
Yes.
Oh. Wasn't there a motion to?
Yeah,
we
was
both
motion. Yeah, and I
we had
can support
discussion.
it. I just was,
All right.
I'm still making sure I'm clear.
Okay.
My
Thank you.
head's clear.
So the motion is there, and it's there and seconded to eliminate option 1, which is do nothing, from our potential recommendation.
Right.
So do I have ayes for taking option 1 out?
Aye.
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 No nays. So option 1 is out. So thank you for that. Moving forward, we're on option 3, the 50-foot channel at $450,000. Little discussion with that one, and I believe I think Colton from the Jefferson County said that it was his understanding that by state statute, people can build their pier out to where they can get their boat in the navigable water. And Mary, I think you just said it was 3 feet.
3 feet is what they have stated. Yeah.
So that was the other issue about a channel. That means not that they would, but they could. You could have 11 piers going out to that channel, which would then limit pretty much everybody else's access, because you're going to have a whole bunch of blockage there. So your sailors and your kayakers and your whatever would have a challenge. So that was brought up. So is there anyone that we want to talk about taking out like now?
Can I ask a question about the depth? The depth profiles that were shared by Patricia Cicero show that the depth is already at 2.5, 3 feet for the good portion of the mill pond, and so I'm curious. But the pictures, it's hard to. The picture is so high up because the piers are really tiny in the picture. How deep is it really? If it's not 3 feet deep.
You're saying specifically that proposed channel or the entirety of the mill pond?
No, I'm thinking of where the riparian owners are for the depth. So if we're talking, because you can put your pier out up to to get to 3 feet of water. And so right now it's it's like 1.5, 2 feet over there, but it does hit 3 feet, like over on the riparian side. So
I
why
think-
couldn't they do, I mean, so today they wouldn't have to go to the channel to get to 3 feet. Based on this, based on what she shared, I'm assuming this was an updated 2022 depth map.
And I apologize, I don't remember all the contours. I
Okay.
think there are depth pockets to that, but then if you go farther south, then it gets shallow again. So
Okay.
you could get out to that part and turn your boat around a couple times, but you wouldn't be able to get out to the main lake.
I think it was, the goal was like a consistent depth.
But also, this is
Okay.
what is considered the bottom. I don't think it considers the weeds.
I agree with that.
When you go down with your depth measure, having done that on these streams, so you can say, oh yeah, it's this deep, but realistically speaking, with those weeds being that thick, you're not going
Okay.
anywhere.
Okay.
Mike's
Gotcha. So this isn't really a fair.
I'm not positive on this, but I
I'm
think
not
I think it refers to firm bottom, like ground set bottom.
When you go
Even
down-
though the silt and stuff, I believe, still equates to depth in most
Okay.
calculations. I'm not positive on that, but I believe that's correct.
That, I agree.
So it's a bit misleading.
I agree.
I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That answers my question. We really don't have we don't have that depth, honestly.
It's-
And in practice.
It's
for the
impossible
ferry
because it
motors or
shifts.
For boat, yeah,
And
okay.
it, you know, it'll be different in August than it is in
Yep.
May, and it's just,
And this is not hard ground lake bed. This is movable, displaceable
walk in
silt.
it.
Yeah, it's displaceable silt.
There's 21 inches at least at the end of my pier.
you go down.
21 inches to ground set, to hard bottom.
Yeah, but how far to the weed tops?
Yeah, 4. Yeah.
Yeah, for
In 3 weeks, it will be impassable.
Yeah. So Annie, you're on the east end of the
I'm
mill pond?
about central. So
Central, okay.
the west end of the mill pond is not accessible by boat. I would say the first, looking at this picture, the first 1, 2, 3, 4 piers, it is not accessible by boat at any time of year. Maybe now with the water levels as high as they are.
But then you can't go to the bridge anyway.
Comes up to within at least 1 foot of the surface.
Yep, I definitely agree with Andy. That's what I've seen looking at the mill pond.
All right, so,
Just thoughts for documenting that to City Council that we're doing our due diligence here. For these 3 remaining options, should we put in writing the like pros versus cons type of thing for?
I would highly suggest
yes,
that.
I think that's an excellent idea.
All right. Well then, we're on option 3, which is
Three.
just the
Yeah, it's,
just the channel.
contours are misleading.
Easy one, least expensive of the remaining options. That's correct.
Yes.
East.
Yes, it's 450,000 versus 840 and 635.
Provides another pro. Would provide public access from the current boat launch on Veterans Lane.
Yes. Say lowest of the options, disruption to the ecosystem.
That's true.
It's a known and supported process per the DNR because it was completed back in the 90s. Now, it's a long time ago, but I would say it's
The channel was,
The channel.
specifically the channel, this option, I'm not quite sure as far as, but this
Aren't we on
area
the
has been
Aren't we on the
disturbed.
channel option?
She's talking about the channel program.
The channel,
Yep, Dan is
isn't
correct.
the channel on the red
There hasn't
option?
been dredging activity on the mill pond.
That 90s sub-dredging was
Yeah.
known.
And there's
Oh, it was that
no,
way. Oh, it wasn't
no
this
paper
way.
trail as far as we're told, that there's no history
What
of.
about this one in
Yeah,
92?
So-
it's minimal. So just for that distinction, Mary, the channel, we are referencing this as a channel, but it's a 50-foot strip, 50-foot wide strip connecting these 2 points. I just want to make sure that we have evidence that that a dredge was performed in 1997 on the Ferry Drive Bridge to the Rock Lake channel. That we have.
Oh, okay.
That's the
What
smart
about the one that
approval
was
form.
1992? Is that the same one? This was 1992 dredging? I don't know.
So let me say it, we don't have any approved DNR permits that this work was completed.
Okay, so then
So
that is
perhaps there
not
were
gonna- don't
dredging
mark that.
operations performed.
We don't know what happened.
There are
I
different
was thinking
areas,
of the
or there are different
DNR one.
types of dredging, maybe it was just disruptive of that silt and sediment to get it out of that channel. I'm not quite sure, but actual removal of silt and sediment, from my knowledge, has not been performed to the extent that we're proposing here.
In the mill pond?
Correct.
Just
Yep,
that
in the mill.
exterior
Yep.
side? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, darn. I thought
Yep.
that was gonna be a good one.
Yep.
So that goes back, was that a pro or a con or just discussion?
I guess I maybe just left that one out. All right. Any other pros before we move on to the cons?
Let's see what else I have here. It will reduce the emergency response time for the boat, but can the boat get underneath ferry?
No.
Okay, never mind.
So this would be a prerequisite for that. If you want to improve response time, dredging of this channel would have to occur regardless for that to happen.
Yep, so
the
we
ferry
should put
drive
that.
bridge raising would be the next step. Or sure.
We could bet on both times of ferry drive and just get rid of that.
Would that, would
The only
it,
problem, yeah, parking.
would it fit under the
Parking.
pedestrian bridge, do you know?
Yeah, pedestrian bridge isn't any issues usually. Oh, no, not,
It's-
which pedestrian? Not the,
The
not
one
the.
that's
iconic.
immediately adjacent
Yeah.
to the ferry drive.
Like the
bridge,
timber frame bridge.
That one that won't be
It has
removed.
just higher clearance than the
Yeah.
ferry drive culvert.
Which is,
Yeah, so this is specifically for the drive culvert. So emergency response could still be an aspect on the condition that the ferry drive bridge is addressed.
But that would be a pro, that would prepare us for that option.
Yep.
Yes.
That would be
It'd
a
be
positive.
long-term, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking short term, we're talking long term.
All right.
that
Any other
yeah,
pros?
we have
Yeah, I was
another
gonna say you can
stormwater
drive
coming
over
through.
the bridge.
One pro is that 50-foot as is would give people a fish-eating edge, so that the weeds, and then they'd have that, there would be a ledge for the fish, for persons to be able to fish on both sides of that channel.
So just right at the ends? You're
On,
talking?
Like-
on both sides, I mean, they could fish along that weed edge, and they could fish along that weed edge, because it'd be going from a foot deep to 4 feet deep.
So right now, I don't know the actual distance between the actual weeds that are growing up there, but it is, I would say it's significantly less than 50 feet of available area from Veterans Lane to Ferry Drive. So this would expand out what's
Okay.
visible right now a bit.
It could.
So I'm going to say would provide a small amount of public shoreline fishing. Is that a fair assessment?
It
or
would be
am I-
public shoreline.
Yeah,
It would
it would
be-
be shoreline. It would be, you're on your boat. Right now, I would say you have the available area for navigation. You can get in and out of the mill pond currently. Now, how much you can actually complete fishing right now, there's not really much. This would increase a small area of fishing accessibility.
So it would increase boat fishing opportunity.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah,
a
that
fair statement.
would be-
It would increase boat fishing.
And the other,
I think,
the other potential would be if there were a boardwalk put along the north part of the marsh grass, then again, somebody fishing from that boardwalk would be able to put their bobber or whatever out there to that edge with some depth. Again, I'm just putting out
Yeah,
every
that is a good point.
well, I think it's more navigability for kayaks and boards, because you will have a channel and you're not getting stuck in the weeds.
Right.
So you do then, it does
Right.
increase your navigability for non-motorized.
Right, you'd have,
Craft.
I'm just gonna say that I got a roadway. You've
Yeah.
got 8 feet wide, so one boat's going one way and one boat's, so you've got 16 feet, plus you got on the other side for kayakers, for relaxers. So that's another issue. That would be good.
All right. Are you ready to jump to cons?
I think so.
All right. No further access for, or no improved access for private
Raining owners.
homeowners.
Very good. Yep.
Piers, yeah.
Yes. For owners on the mill pond, both residential and commercial.
I would say limited public shoreline fishing access.
Yes.
You could say least amount of or least, the option with the least amount of improved public shoreline fishing.
It doesn't offer any increased shoreline fishing, does it?
So I think he's.
I mean, that's
kinda-
where
he's
we're
kinda
discussing
saying
it.
right
For sure, a
here.
fair statement though is out of these 3 remaining options, it offers the least amount of additional fishing access.
From the shore?
Additional shoreline.
Yep, shoreline.
Yeah.
You still could near the bridge, maybe on the Bartles Beach area, but that's
I think
ambitious.
that's stretching this a little bit, but okay.
But that's what I was gonna say, this is the least, and definitely the least amount of improved shoreline fishing access.
Another con is that the expansion of the length of the piers.
Yeah.
I'm gonna group that in with no increased access to, no,
Mill pond
I'm gonna have them be.
corners
I will include that, but specifically call out potential of lengthening piers.
I don't know that, is it, I know we say that as a con, but I don't think it is honestly feasible for a riparian owner to get from there, to literally afford and execute putting a pier in all the way to this. I know they could do it, but they would have done it already because this channel's been there. I think we take away their ability to get to 3 feet. I think that it's that specific. I don't know that it gives them an option to go longer. I mean, they could by law rules, but I don't.
I've been up north and I don't think I'm exaggerated. There are 200-yard piers.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
There are some in the marsh now.
the-
Marsh.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
South of like the bike trail.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I suppose it is feasible. Maybe we should
Yeah.
mark it as such then.
It-
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair, Tim.
If you
Yeah.
dredge it, they will come.
Ooh. Wow. I know. We
Okay.
talked about swinging ours up to the
know
buoy
that.
last year and we didn't have any water because that was we didn't
Yeah,
have
it
3
is
feet.
absolutely a possibility.
Okay.
What's that?
It is absolutely a possibility that could happen.
Which then we can say would lead to congestion and obstruction of other traffic,
I think there's a potential there.
potentially.
And I don't know if there's any rules as how many boats can be mirrored at a private pier.
Yes,
It
there
has
are.
to do with how much
There- yeah.
shoreline you have.
Yep, that's,
Okay.
Mike
Yep.
is correct.
Thank you.
I have that printed out if you want to read it after class.
Thank you. With the test.
Nope.
I don't know exactly what it is, but there are.
Oh, good. That's good to know.
Yeah, it's like
So that
per
it
50
wouldn't beg
feet
to
or
be
something, I forget.
flotilla. All right, you need for McCrae's notes and such, any other cons? As far as process, and I'll put this to you, McCrae and others, should we do the pros and cons that you were saying for each of these options, then come back and discuss them with more detail?
I don't know. I'm open to thoughts. We could do pros and cons of each, and then I don't know if we're at that point.
I
I
would-
would like to do that because then I can hear everyone's perspective that I might be missing, and it
Yes,
might
and
change
then
my
that way,
viewpoint on
that way,
what
if
I'm
we think
thinking.
of something, we can put
Yeah.
it to the other one. So
That would
thank
be
you
really
for that.
helpful
point.
for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Everybody
Because
agree with that
everyone
one?
has
Yeah,
different
that's a good point.
perspectives.
So that, are there any other pros, cons for option 50-foot channel? All right, not, let's go to option 4, which is 50-foot channel and total shoreline. 50-foot channel, 4 feet deep, total shoreline, 50-foot wide. Is that what we were thinking before? And 3 feet deep?
Yes.
All right,
That was the initial proposal.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, and that would be, I would just add, I'd prefer the minimum amount that is great for them to get out, to turn, and to navigate if another boat's there. I think it's safety, but also for cost considerations, if 40 feet is better, then I would say I would prefer 40 feet. But I don't know what the right distance is. I don't want to spend money that doesn't help, we want it to function safely.
Yeah. I think
and
50 foot
appropriately,
was.
but I want to make sure we're mindful on the cost, so.
50 foot was kind of, at least for my understanding too, chosen as, I suppose, the easiest option. It provides the most amount, if you're going right from the shoreline out, the most available realistic dredging option from the shoreline, so you can cast out shoreline fish, and then also allows the same amount of access for boats. So it was just
Okay.
kind of the, by ease of proposal, I suppose, to have a 50 foot standard shoreline.
Easier to calculate the cost.
Yeah.
We're not making decisions just because it's easy. Let's,
Yep,
let's
yeah.
make
that
it
is true.
because it's,
That was a pro of that
all right,
suggestion.
so thank you.
But then again, I mean, if you look at casting, I'm seeing this purely as just like a shoreline for fishermen as well from that perspective. 50 feet is a reasonable amount of space to have casting access or casting distance. It's a usable amount of clear shoreline.
And also, if any other boats that are using that area, then there's space for everybody.
Yep, and then paddle boarders and kayakers too. 50 foot may seem like a lot, but if you actually do go through the mill pond too, I can kind of see, well, if someone's shoreline fishing, can a kayaker pass them along here? Would they be able to go around the mill pond? So I still think 50 feet is somewhat reasonable.
Okay, and we can
I
verify
still think it's
other
fairly reasonable for that.
licenses. What their thoughts are.
So your picture had the pink didn't go all the way up to the blue, because the 50 foot was starting at the blue.
I started when we were looking at surface water, and Andy brought this up as well. So that is your actual delineated shoreline. The blue line is a surveyed shoreline measurement. Now this was like surface water absolute approximation. This rough, like I said, very, very rough drawing. I did it just based on a surface water area overlay.
Because the picture, it looks like we would be dredging half of the mill pond. I was just trying to get the DNR like in my head a little bit. So this one, I was just thinking is the most disruptive to the ecosystem. And
For the
I was
remaining
trying to-
three options,
of the
yes,
remaining
it
three
would be.
options. But I was trying to find, is it really less than half? Is our objective, it'd be nice to kind of have a reference to say we're disturbing less than half of the mill pond. It would be a nice statement versus more than half of trying to rationalize the
Well, it
balance
depends.
of what we're trying to achieve.
It depends on how you want to perform this option. This is not a solidified option. You could say from the median water mark, 50 feet out, or you could say from edge of vegetation to the shoreline, or from the edge of the vegetation, like your actual surface water, 50 feet from that point out. I mean, it's still it's still up to your guys' ballpark as far as what you would like to propose. So in the photo, you can see that's edge of vegetation, so surface water, 50 feet out, or you can go from that blue line, which is your normal watermark, 50 feet from that point out. So it's absolutely up to your discretion for what.
Just for clarification, when you say normal watermark, you mean ordinary high watermark?
Or ordinary high
So
water, term-wise, yes.
The point that delineates public property from private property, the lot line.
Yeah.
Ordinary high water mark all 50 feet.
Yep.
That makes
Sorry,
sense.
yep. That term correction for sure. That is definitely correct.
I'm just looking at that, then I see from that ordinary high water mark, the blue, there are a fair number of piers that extend out, but one would assume that the need for the pier going out that far would be obviated by the dredging up to that blue line.
And that's kind of one of the reasons that I looked at
Maybe
is
we tuck this in,
surface
as I'm
water
trying to say, and
area.
then we have less dredge
I don't
here.
want to insert
So
myself
DNR
into this
would
too much, but
that.
if you're looking at minimizing that impact, maybe 50 feet is more than enough, and you could rephrase it as to a point that allows for 3 feet of water for access, or something like that. I'm not trying to direct this whatsoever, but you're dealing with those competing interests that you've already acknowledged.
So that was kind of my thought and reasoning behind that. I suppose fluid
I don't
line
think it's
from
going
that.
to be far from 50 feet. I think 50 feet sounds bigger than what it is in realization when you're out there actually looking.
Yep. And I would definitely agree with that too. You could say to a standard point of 3 foot net or 3 foot depth or 3 foot water depth, you could say. And looking at that, I base that off of approximation from vegetation edge out is kind of how I looked at it.
And if I'm going by the scale that's on the bottom of the page, 1 inch equals 140 feet. So if you do a quarter inch there, you're going to see that where the blue to the red, a good portion of it is within that 50 feet.
Mm-hmm. So that's why we were looking at surface water, like when we were actually delineating the surface water versus the entirety of the mill pond. Right. That's kind of the reason behind it.
Because
So that red line was
less disturbed.
within that
I like
50 foot
that.
benchmark. And like Dan was saying, it's 50 feet is not as much as it really looks on this aerial overlay when you're out there.
Right. But it just that. Thank you for clarifying what the blue line. Yeah, and that's
ordinary high water mark. That's
ordinary
correct.
high water mark.
Yep, that's the correct term.
And I can tell you that in those images, those aerial images that you have on your agenda there, that gray material is a water willow. It's a very rough and aggressive plant. You can almost walk through there without boots on, almost. But it is the reason why those piers extend that far, because you cannot get at that. You cannot access that. So by removing that material, you absolutely would enable homeowners to shorten their piers if they so chose, because there would be enough water there. I would also add one last comment, that on those, as mentioned, on those piers to the very west side of the mill pond, without that, you will not have 3 feet. And if you started from the high water mark and went out 50 feet, you would then end up with about this much. You'd have your 3 feet, and then you'd have 1 foot. So if if you don't do this last end tail, it won't allow for those people to get out without going all the way back east or this way.
I'm not sure I'm following that.
He said this is like 1 foot, so
So you could almost say-
to get out, to be able to go up here.
So what you could say is basically creating access.
Yeah,
for the-
yeah.
the surrounding-
So instead of having 50 feet by default, we are dredging 50 feet from this point out. You could say we are dredging from this delineated point, ordinary high water mark or whatever it may be, from this delineated point to a point to have 3 foot navigable access for watercraft.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a way to put it.
Of course, we're kind of making that 3 foot navigable access by our dredging.
Yeah, yep, that's fair. Yep.
Can I put that down as a pro then, that would shorten the riparian piers? I'm trying to pick out the little nuggets of the discussion here.
It would shorten them, but it would improve the amount of area they have on their pier that would be navigable.
Sorry?
I mean, the amount of pier that they have would then be navigable.
Well,
So
but
you
they
see some of
shorten-
these, I mean, some of these piers that do come out, you have maybe 30% of the pier is actually in the surface water. The rest of it is just to get to the surface water.
Okay.
The other issue, if I'm hearing correctly, a lot of that vegetation that's there is invasive.
Yellow iris, Andy mentioned willow as well.
But the lilies are not, I don't think. I don't think they're.
Why, I don't think,
I didn't say lilies, no.
Yeah.
Water willow.
I'm sorry, I thought you said
Willows.
lilies, okay.
so that would be another potential pro, that if you go to the high water mark and dredge out to where it's navigable, you would also, as part of that, be able to get at a lot of the invasive.
Just a caution there, then that presupposes a commitment to replace that vegetation with native, else the invasives will come right back much faster. That is simply a fact.
Yep, that is
So I
correct.
mean, I think it's good, but then we need to be honest and say,
Well, and that Mike's a great point, but it still goes back to the maintenance and preservation.
Right.
So anything you do, as you heard from Colton, anything you do, there is a risk, and so there would have to be potentially some sort of monitor that would go in there and make sure that,
well, and up front, you'd have to take, I think, some responsibility for establishing some native shoreline
all that.
Yep,
vegetation, or else you're just going to get it right back.
When I first thought about it is one, removal of invasives will be replaced by removals unless mitigated. The next one is all these invasive species, although undesirable, they do provide shoreline erosion control.
Yep.
That's also a negative if you are to remove those. So that kind of depends on where you start your dredging. Would you pull that native that vegetation out? And one of the negatives to that would be there could be increased shoreline erosion.
Right.
So do you start it at the surface water mark where it is now, or do you start it at the ordinary high water mark? So
Would that
absolutely.
be a DNR conversation? Would somebody, or Patricia Cicero and
Yeah,
Colton
I
be
would
able to
defer
give
that.
us some advice regarding one of those two scenarios? But the plan would be to give us the loop, if you will.
Yep, I think that's absolutely fair. They would be the party that we would end up asking the same question to anyways.
And there have been articles about how to get at that, as far as, I can't remember the name of it, like the fabric with, interact with like reeds or something. I don't even know what they're made out of, but it's a way to keep it there, and they stack it and get plants in there, and then once that degrades, then you've got desirable plants that are already there. But I think that's something we want to get from.
Excuse me, Dan, I think that's a severe storm warning
That
thing, right?
severe storm warning, I believe that may be tornado warning as well. I'm
Are
not
we
sure.
okay in this building?
I haven't seen tornado yet.
I'm
We do
kind of
have
looking
a
right
flood
now.
warning.
Flood warning.
Well, I guess, wouldn't, as part of our application process, the DNR, I assume, would come back with comments on, yes,
Yes.
you can do this, but
Yep.
you must do this,
You're
this, and this too.
absolutely correct.
So I guess we shouldn't get down, no pun intended, into the weeds too much on that. But
And my reasoning was, if we have our designated problem, navigability is the main problem that has been brought up. That's why I factored like, hey, maybe you begin your dredging at the surface water area level before you get into some of these vegetative plants, and maybe that would be a future issue to tackle, like standardized shoreline erosion control along that area. I'm not quite sure, but if we're specifically referencing navigability, that's why I drew a proposed line at the water or surface water mark.
So would we maybe consider for cons, potential additional costs for erosion control and/or establishment of native species?
Yep, that
I like that.
absolutely would be an option.
Okay.
Are we on the cons?
Yes.
I think as all the other ones, no evidence to guarantee duration, the dredge impact duration of its.
You could say that
longevity
for
in life.
all of proposed
All
dredging
of them. I think we have
options.
that
Yep.
in the last one too, don't we?
Yeah.
We should
And I
have that in
don't-
all of the dredges.
I didn't put it in the last one, but
Okay.
if it applies to all, we're trying to compare these to each other. If it's in all of them, I don't know if
Okay.
yeah, that's
there's
a good
no
point.
benefit in it.
With the other,
So I'm sorry, the cons I have so far are that it might increase erosion. And what else was the con?
It would be the highest amount of impact on the mill pond.
Biggest impact, okay.
It would be the
Expensive.
most disturbance in the water area.
so the con would be the issue of sensitive areas.
Right.
We talk about the navigable part as part of this. We also want to make sure we are being aware of anything that would be considered sensitive areas.
This would be also, out of the three remaining options, this would be the most expensive. I don't know if that was proposed.
Yeah. This is 840,000.
Yep.
Okay.
And I have an additional one that is, I think, worth noting, but I'm not sure that there's anything that we would be able to do with it. But there is this could be setting a precedent for other city riparian owners who have an interest in dredging their shoreline. And there are two neighborhood areas that have had discussions about it, recognizing that is a town discussion, but the sand is coming from the city parks. And so there's a lot of, there have been discussion regarding dredging conversations, and what that might look like, I don't know, but I think that is something that there might be an interest of other riparian owners who have then an interest in pursuing dredging.
I think that's a good
Yeah,
point.
so to play devil's advocate, or I suppose to understand better, you're saying if the city were to fund this for dredging along private shorelines, therefore it could be opening up the door for other riparian owners to do the same. Is that kind of?
Yeah,
To
an interest to
request-
pursue a request for, and it's the shoreline all on South Ferry. It's down by, oh gosh, I don't know, there's a little inset hook. I'm on the shoal. It used to be 4 feet. We're at 2.5, 3 feet. This year we're really high because we've got lots of rain. And there have been a lot of discussion. It used to be rock, now it's sand, and people say, dude, why? And it's before the mill pond discussion even happened. This has been over the course of my tenure here in Lake Mills about would dredging ever be an option to get us back to a scenario. Either one of two ways: you have to raise the water level consistently, or you have to dredge to get to the prior 4-foot depths that are shown in the maps from 1950. So I don't know that it's setting a precedent, but there may be questions regarding possibility of pursuing other dredging. And I know that there's on the lakes township side, there is an area that I know riparian owners have been
Jala
coming forward.
Channel.
Yes, have been wanting to dredge, and that has been obviously not pursued.
That's a
but
man-made ditch. That's
That's different.
That's distinct from the lake itself.
Yeah.
I wouldn't personally, as the attorney for the city, be concerned about that claim coming from those homeowners because of the immunities that the city has for activities that it takes on. And I don't know how you create the obligation on the city itself, whether or not the city was willing to endeavor to, engage in that activity to maintain property values or access or some desirable trait perhaps, but I wouldn't see compulsory action available to those homeowners to compel the city to undertake such an action.
I mean, it's still, even if you were to use this option as well, you'd still be fulfilling a portion of the city council resolution. It's in the community entirely, which includes riparian owners. So.
And users.
It's just a risk, and we're trying to do cons. It's just one that might not have been on the radar screen.
Absolutely.
There may be an interest.
So we may be
So
increasing
further
erosion.
dredging.
It might, it costs more, it's the biggest disturbance of sensitive areas, and it might be precedent for dredging other areas.
Yeah, or just
any
an
other
interest
cons?
or pursue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
I
other
think precedent's
cons?
the right word, but.
Wouldn't the dredging out on the lake itself, wouldn't that be township?
Generally, yes.
Yeah, that's
The
normally
city
township
does have,
jurisdiction.
Jurisdiction over shoreline, so we get to where that ordinary high water mark has meandered to. It does move. I think you've nailed an issue.
Yeah.
We do have shared jurisdiction over the lake. The township does have jurisdiction over the surface, the body.
Okay.
But they have nothing on the mill pond, the town, that's
No,
strictly.
that's
That's
city.
my understanding
Yep.
distinctly, yes.
Yep,
Okay.
city prop, that is,
It's wholly encapsulated by city. We own all of the
Yes.
shoreline around the mill.
Huh,
Yes.
okay, interesting. Should we go to pros?
On option
We're on
4,
option 4 yet.
We
pros,
did
cons.
pros already. Unless you have another one to add.
So improve of pier access, removal of invasives, and
I have provides public. So some of the ones from the option 3 applied just because it included the 50-foot channel. So for option 4, as far as pros, I have would provide public access from boat launch on Veterans Lane. Provides public shoreline fishing.
and shoreline, exactly, okay.
I don't think we mentioned that. I just jotted that down. Would increase fire department response time, and then I put in the caveat, similar to the other one, that ferry street bridge improvements would be needed. And then the last pro I have right now is dredging from the high water mark would potentially remove invasive vegetation.
Okay.
I have 2. One is just might be rather than calling Ferry Street improvements, I would say changes, because some people might not call them improvements.
Good point.
my thought initially is,
Modifications.
just from a recreation standpoint, there is something to say about a circuit that you were able to navigate that is a pro. So it is
Is able to what?
a circuit.
A circuit,
So you would be
so
able to
navigability.
paddle. Yep, you would basically be able to paddle the circumference of the mill pond, which for a recreation
Fish.
aspect, that is a positive.
I think generally,
Fish.
public and private access is increased, navigability is
Yeah.
increased.
Potential,
Yeah, that's a pro.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
very
that's a
much.
good one, Eric.
A potential con would be that there'd be more than likely a need to pay for and maintain channel markers.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
That is very valid. That's a good comment.
so
Go into, can you describe that a little bit more, I suppose? Channel markers, so you're saying like the actual delineation of what this route of travel would be?
yes,
Yeah.
because usually they're black and white if it's a channel, and then there's whatever. So I just think we'd have to be considered, and if it's going to be a navigable channel, and because what you don't want is you don't want people thinking it's all the same,
And they go to
and they try
6
to get over to
feet.
their
Yeah, 6
over
inches.
to their buddy's pier, and all of a sudden they're stuck in the mud.
That's very valid comment.
That's a good one. That's
So
a
just be aware of that. Don't think they have to worry about, but maybe a con is they might have to be lit, which are more expensive also.
Okay.
then
I'm keeping
Especially
it
the
somewhat vague for now,
Okay,
but just
all right, that's
saying
fine.
channel markers may be
Yep.
needed.
Yep, okay.
All right. Any other pros or cons for option 4 before we move on to option 5?
So similar to the shoreline fishing aspect that you listed, this option, I don't know if you listed it, there's the largest amount of increased navigability for the proposed options.
Not specifically. I'll.
Yeah.
But if we delineated the least amount, we should delineate the most amount of improved
True.
access.
A potential con, and this is just potential, homeowners might see a change in their values and then a difference in their taxes. That's just
Well, how
conjecture.
we-
If
well,
it
how we
becomes,
pay
if
for
it
it may
becomes,
influence.
what's that?
And also how we pay for it may influence their taxes. I mean, I don't know how.
All those, yes. So
Well,
I-
whether or not it's subject to special assessment.
Yeah,
Yes.
it could be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which it is, would be, yep.
At this point, like we talked about before, that's kind of beyond the scope of here. Let's
Right, but it's a con that,
Yep, potential negative.
Well, mentioning, I think.
yeah.
Yep.
So,
They're transparent, I like transparency, so I think,
yes.
Absolutely.
no surprises.
No, absolutely not, even though there will be.
All right.
So are we on
Or-
the final one?
Mike and McCree's advantage or help, are we done with pros and cons on that one?
Unless anyone
Think
has
so.
anything to add.
All right. So moving to option 5. Option 5 is the 50-foot channel, 4 feet deep, and public shoreline on city-owned property to the depth of 3 feet.
Sort of like a crescent, then, in other words, right, basically.
Yeah.
So you can say all of the other pros that were listed, most of the other pros that were listed for the other option would apply here, with the exception of that the most amount of increased navigability and recreation. So you would kind of lose the paddle route, I suppose you could propose it as. And then I think the most obvious one is, of course, not providing any additional access for property owners.
Yep, and you still have the potential issue of private docks being extended out a great distance into the
Yep,
lake.
the one, the negative that was proposed for option 3 would still be existing.
Another pro would be you would preserve more sensitive area, it would be less
Yep,
disruption.
it's less amount of disturbance within the
And
mill
cheaper.
pond. That is true.
And less, and cheaper by about 200 grand, I think, roughly.
Yeah, exactly, at a lesser cost.
Can you help me understand what dredging does for why dredging is good for fishing on the shoreline here? So
Providing habitat depth and accessibility. So right now, it's you aren't able to cast from shore. You're really not able to cast in the mill pond. Perhaps Andy can attest to this a little bit, but the only areas that are surface water fishable in the mill pond are those that are navigable.
Okay, so
Yeah,
from
I-
that little,
Yeah.
I haven't gone out there to look at that little.
Right
over by
now,
Sandy
kind of
Beach,
that.
little push out, you can't, it's lily pads or other things in there and you
Yep.
can't, okay. So
Pretty
you can only
much.
throw a frog or
So I would say
something.
right now,
Okay.
surface water fishing is not really likable or an option at the mill pond unless something were to be done, whether it be weed cutting or dredging or whatever.
That's why they all fish in the channel.
Yep.
Under the bridge, because there's
Exactly.
no place else to
There's
fish.
too much vegetation and too much silt buildup to adequately be able to surface fish.
And also a little bit of, depends on the time of year.
True.
When the water temperature goes up in the shallower areas,
Boom.
The fish aren't gonna go there
the
because it's
fish
too
are
warm.
basically gone.
Yeah.
So that's something by having a little bit of area where they have some coolness and some places to hide and some access. That's another advantage of having the dredging.
And having the deviation between depths of water as well, you appeal to different species, potentially more diverse population of species, but right now it's just not.
So that would be for
fishable.
all the dredging options, right? Because we're providing different depths.
That is
Yeah.
our thought.
Yeah.
All right. I carried over the pros and cons that would still apply to each of these, but any, I guess, specific to this option, what pros do we have?
Cheaper
Yeah, that's probably the largest one.
Pros, it
and less disruption of the
less
ecology.
Disruption. Those are probably your two largest
Those are the
positives
big
for
ones.
this option.
Well,
Well,
the
not
positive
lower,
is
lowest.
increased public fishing
No, but not,
That one would still
compared to
apply.
just the channel.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
right.
So
Compared
that
to
one would
option-
still apply to Number 4 and
Yeah,
5 have
okay.
that similarity between the two.
Okay, I jotted down median level of disruption and cost, because it is between the other two options that we have right now. Because 50-foot channel by itself is still on the table.
And less potential for invasive species because of the less disruption, right? Something about
That is one thing
It
too.
increases unknowns.
Yeah.
I mean, there's an invasive species in the mill pond now.
Yeah.
If you do that, then it increases unknowns.
I guess a potential con would be you're creating a dead end, so that if you do have a boat fishing and someone goes and wants to turn around, I don't know, it's some traffic issues potentially.
Yeah.
The other issue, and this is for pretty much any of these, parking on Veterans Lane. You make it a better place, you're going to have potential more people wanting to park down there and use it.
That could be a con, but then for the pro too, the flip side would be you increase the ability to access this body of water. The city could have additional revenue sources for more people launching at that as well. It's kind of the flip side.
Yes.
So these pros and cons are comparing these. So if
Yeah, that's good.
I'm not going to include that because that increased traffic on Ferry Drive and parking would apply to all of these.
Okay. Yeah. But it would not apply to option 1, correct?
Right. That's off the table.
That's off the
Yeah,
table.
you're specifically talking about 3, 4, and 5.
Good,
Only
good, good.
3, 4, and 5 will have very similar issues between them all.
All right, so at this point, thank you. Are there, do we need to have the pros and cons spoken to option 3, option 4, option 5? Or are we, from what our discussion is, do we have a memory enough to say of what we heard, we're ready to eliminate an option?
I would like to speak them out loud in case there's something I missed or wrote down incorrectly.
All right, wonderful.
So interrupt me at any point.
And you'll send me that, eh?
Yes.
Good.
All right. Option 3, which is 50-foot channel from Veterans Lane to the Ferry Street bridge.
Ferry Drive.
Ferry Drive. Ferry Drive
Yeah, it's always called a street, I don't know what it is.
bridge. Okay. Pros: least expensive. Would provide public access from boat launch on Veterans Lane. Least disruption of ecosystem. Would increase fire department's response time, with the caveat of the Ferry Drive bridge. Ferry Drive. And modifications being needed to that. Modifications. Would increase boat fishing opportunity and potentially some shore fishing opportunity. That's what I have for pros. For cons, for option 3, no increase access to mill pond property owners, potential of lengthening private piers into mill pond, and obstruction of traffic in the mill pond due to that.
McCray, could you include the city as part of the owners? Because right now I believe we're considering private property owners, but I think it's not increasing the city's access.
You could just say riparian owners would be the way to delineate that.
Okay.
Is that kind of what you're getting at? Or?
I'm just saying that when it isn't going to
You're
help.
saying you have to provide some more explanation rather than just property owners. Is what you're getting at.
Right.
Would be private property owners?
I would say riparian.
I think Tim is saying it's both.
Yes.
It's city and, so riparian is inclusive, it includes both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Riparian. All right. No increased access to mill pond riparian owners. Property owners? Riparian property
Public
owners?
and private riparian owners.
Okay. Okay. Second con, least amount of public shoreline fishing of the remaining options. And that was it for option 3. Was there anything I missed there?
You could say, I know we talked about increased navigability access. You could say this is also the least amount of recreational access.
That's true.
Eric, does this still give you the ability to improve the access for kayaks, for stand-up paddleboards, and some of those ideas that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd still be able to pursue that. Yeah, still be able to pursue those potentials. This is, just for your clarification as well, this is specifically for short-term addressing of issues, and then there is going to be the delineation of long-term improvements.
All right, ready to move on to option 4, which is 50-foot channel in total shoreline. All right, pros. Would provide public access from boat launch on Veterans Lane. Provides public shoreline fishing and some additional boat fishing. Would provide access to, I got a copy and paste, public and private riparian owners, similar to the previous option. Would provide access, I'm sorry, not that one. Would increase fire department's response time.
Or decrease, actually.
Decrease, yes. Yes, thank you.
Oh, it would increase if they ran into the bridge and they had to jump the boat around and go back.
Good.
There is that.
Would decrease. Yeah. Okay. Good catch. Would decrease. Dredging, another pro, dredging from high water mark would.
McCray,
Ordinary. Or
might we change the word from decrease to improve? Use a positive word?
Yes. Would.
That wasn't my idea, though.
Nicely done.
Words are powerful.
All right. Would improve fire department response time. Okay. Dredging from the high water mark would potentially remove invasive vegetation. And last pro for option 4 would create the most amount of navigable area in the mill pond.
And I think the fact that it's a circuit is important. It just, you know, there's a big difference.
Boats tend to go in circles.
All right, I'll add onto that one.
Yeah.
Would provide a
It would just be a really nice, safe space for kids to go and paddle around without having to be on the lake.
circuit for paddlers. Okay. All right. Any other pros that I missed there?
Do we want to specifically highlight non-motorized recreation access? I mean, you could say this is the most improved non-motorized recreational access out of these options.
True.
I think it is important to highlight. We focused on motorboat access, but I think it would be important to also highlight non-motorized watercraft.
Yep.
Because right now they're launching at Bartles Beach
Into Rock Lake.
into Rock Lake.
Yep.
But they could then potentially launch into the mill pond.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so I would just say it increase the amount of recreation area for non-motorized watercraft.
So when they're practicing their stand-up paddleboard skills or more
They're not
quiet
hitting
spot.
200-foot waves
That's
from
right.
the wave boats that are going by.
I just thought of a con, and I don't know what we're going to do about it. There might be people bringing their pets down here if things are more accessible and things along the shoreline.
Yeah, so that would apply.
On the west side, they simply couldn't. On the part that's classified as park, part of Bartles Beach Park, on the east side of South Ferry Drive.
That's
Bartles Beach Park, and that's prohibited.
Yep, Dan's correct.
By ordinance, so I mean you could adopt an ordinance. You could say pets are not allowed in the mill park, if that is an issue.
Okay.
I think we tackle that one if it comes to us.
Okay.
But on that side right now, I mean, it would be restricted. All the individual property owners along there, they have rights. They can do it right now if they want additional restriction.
What about Veterans Lane? There's that small piece of
Yeah,
public.
I'm not gonna go as far as to say that it's disallowed at that point. I'm not familiar with the ordinance that says you are not allowed to do this here. And I certainly have taken dogs out of that.
Which might be fine for training, dogs, retrievers. I mean, that's another potential access
Yeah,
thing.
another recreation.
Recreation. What's that?
Yeah, so, I mean, specifically, you've got, if you do propose this option, let's limit the private landowners, you have 50% of your proposed dredging public area, which is allowable for that, and 50% that's not. So you kind of have two different sides here.
Control by ordinance, I think that's.
I might leave that one out, just, it might be getting a little too into the weeds at this point.
Yeah.
Any other comments on that? McCray says let's leave that out.
I would agree at this point. Let's tackle it if it
I bring it
comes.
up, we can leave it out. Thank you.
All right, did I go over, I don't think I went over cons for this one yet. Today. Okay, so cons, and once again, we're on the 50-foot channel and total shoreline. Could require additional costs associated with establishing native vegetation. Highest level of disturbance and most expensive. Channel markers may be needed, and money to purchase and maintain. And then last con I have is private property owners could see tax increases associated with the improvements.
We're already taxed at lake rates, so.
I don't know that.
I can make comparisons.
I went on Zillow, and it was just interesting to me the difference.
We're taxed at comparable rates to the county side of the rate.
Is there a special
Township
assessment?
side.
Township side.
That's
Oh, the
his
township
argument.
side. Okay, never mind.
That's his
Never
argument.
mind.
I think we're identifying an issue.
Yep.
So am I keeping that one or getting rid of it, or am I adding potentially?
I think potentially is.
It could be
Keep it in.
reassessed.
Yeah, they could be reassessed, and
It wouldn't change unless you change the bridge. If you change the bridge, it changes the whole game, for sure.
all that, it's a potential.
Okay.
Might scare people if they hear that.
I like transparency. If it's a possibility, I
Yeah.
think it needs to be noted,
Yeah.
so that there's no surprises for
Right.
anybody. Because sometimes
Yes.
what you want comes other consequences,
The-
so we
I
need to
don't-
be transparent.
Thank you, Mary. The other, I don't know if I heard it, with this option, you still have the private property owners could build their piers out to the navigable piece.
No, this is the total shoreline.
This is the
Yeah.
total shoreline right now.
So this omits, we're talking about this one.
We're still on 4.
Oh, you're on 4, I thought you were on 5, I'm sorry.
Nope, sorry.
All right. Thank you.
And yeah, okay, that was the end of 4. Anything I missed, either pros or cons for option 4?
Hearing none, let's move to option 5, which is the 50-foot channel, 4 feet deep, and public shoreline 50 feet wide and 3 feet deep.
All right, pros would provide public access from boat launch on Veterans Lane, provides public shoreline fishing and additional boat fishing, would increase fire department, would improve fire department response time. Dredging from high water mark would potentially remove invasive vegetation. I transferred that one. It's going to be to a lesser extent than the other option. Do I clarify that or just leave it as is?
Do we know, Eric?
Same statement, no less than option.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, if we're delineating the amounts of each, I would say less. There is still invasive species along the public shorelines. There is.
Wait, so you're saying it's both a con and a pro? It's a con in that you're not taking as much invasive species out because you're not doing the total shoreline, but it's a pro because you're not disturbing the ecology as much?
I guess I just had it as a pro.
I mean,
You still are, but to a lesser extent
Yes.
than option 4.
okay. It's cheaper.
Cheaper? Valid.
I have median level of disruption and cost because this is in the middle.
Yeah.
What were the numbers again?
That one is 630.
633.
Yeah, and this is, just over $600.
633.
Kind of right in the middle.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, that's what I had for pros. For cons, for option 5, I had could require additional cost associated with establishing native vegetation. I'm going to add that same.
Yeah,
Eric.
I would say the majority of the proposed dredge area, at least on the east side, is for one, either already having erosion control methods on it by the Legion. It's actually riprap, and then the rest of it is actually seawall or man-made.
Okay.
So very, very much to a lesser extent. The only area that you could see that would specifically be on the west side.
Okay. I think I'll still include the same statement, but add the though to a lesser extent than option 4. Channel markers may be needed. Would that apply to this one or not? Because we're not really creating like, what do we call it, a circuit?
I do not know. I would still say it could be a potential. I would say to a lesser extent, but you could still have watercraft going along these areas.
Okay.
I mean, if you're delineating a navigable space, which this would be, I think it could be an option.
Okay. I have a con, creates a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
With associated traffic issues, I would say.
Yeah. I would agree.
Craft traffic. Yeah.
And then last con I have is no increased access to Mill Pond property owners, and the same caveat of potential of lengthening of private piers into the Mill Pond.
Correct.
Obstruction of traffic.
Yep. That would still be a con that carries over from option 3.
Any pros or cons I missed with that option? All right.
Thank you.
It's documented.
Hearing none?
Thank you for doing that for us. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
You get
Appreciate it.
3 options to vote on now.
Do we want to go eliminating options, or do we want to just jump into an option?
We're going to,
Mr. Chair.
May I address the board before you go on?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Lisa Curler, 369 West Prospect Street, and I'm currently the City Council President. Number one, I want to commend your board. I was at tonight's meeting and last month's meeting. You guys have made incredible progress. You've put in so much time and effort. I greatly appreciate it. And I know you're very close. Your obligation to the council at the next council meeting in 2 weeks and a day is to give a progress report. I think at the last meeting you were feeling a lot of momentum and wanting to feel like you could give your recommendation on the short term at that meeting. I want to encourage you to not feel too much pressure to do that. If you can reach that tonight, great, but you've put a lot of stuff on a computer. You may want to give yourself some time to look at what McCrae's just drafted, put that into a report, look through it one more time, fine-tune it before you give it as an official report with your recommendations. So those are just my personal thoughts. Having watched you the last couple of meetings, I think you've made, like I said, incredible progress. I think you've definitely got enough for Tim or McCrae or whoever's going to be speaking in a couple weeks to give that progress report. But you may want to give yourselves time just to think about it a little bit more. Maybe you'll get some additional input from Jefferson County staff or from Eric or, from citizens to help you narrow it down. So again, just kind of my 2 cents worth, but I want to just thank you for all the work that you've accomplished, and please don't put too much pressure on yourself to have to make that final decision tonight. If a little more time would allow you to come up with more refined thing, I don't think there's going to be any negative consequences in terms of the city budget or the timeline of this project. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
I was going to say, I do kind of agree with that, because as you guys eliminate options, we now have these 3. You've already removed those off the table, and we've already brought up questions that we haven't really taken time to address yet. And one of the ones that we looked at was, do we start a 50-foot dredge from the ordinary high water mark, or do we dredge it from the surface water area? Is a fairly large question. Do you dredge 50 feet, or do you just dredge until a navigable depth of 3 feet is reached for those riparian owners? So I think those two things that you've kind of brought up now that we've fleshed out these options a little bit more are fairly valid, and they haven't really been discussed all that much. But
And more refined costs. Super appreciate we're taking a really
Yep.
before the word things. I don't know how to get that. That's my because how do we get more?
I will say
you know?
we had our OPCC originally,
Yeah.
and
Define that, please, Eric.
opinion of projected construction costs. In that, you had asked me to provide a more accurate or a more updated option for dredging the entirety of the mill pond at A24.03. I was able to receive that from our contract engineers. I have not done that same option for the proposed options we currently have. It was not requested at the time, and that's something I could say, that option is eliminated. Please provide an updated cost estimate for these proposed options. We have not received that yet. Because at the time, the board was initially talking about entire surface water dredge at 824. So that would give me enough time to have a little bit more refined of a cost analysis for them. It is just kind of my thoughts, but you do as you see fit, I would say.
I wanted to raise a question. I believe last meeting and the kind of reason for this special meeting was with anticipation of getting this project on next year's budget. If we delay, are we then delaying another year for this project?
Well, like I said, we normally...
You want me to?
Oh, sure, yeah, by all means.
I think you still have time. The 2025 budget is your goal. The city will adopt its annual budget in November. Capital requests haven't been made as on a department basis yet. So we're at the initial stages of that. I fear if the goal is 2025 that's not attainable at this point anyway, because of other studies that will need to be accomplished and other information that's just lacking, especially going through the permitting process with the DNR. I think that is important, and I think you should have it on your radar, but I don't think you're at the point where you can't make progress for improvements to be included on the 2025 budget based on your recommendation.
Okay.
Very, very nicely said too, and that was for like the entirety of the project as well. I've started my capital improvement requests for 2025 fiscal year. I always try to have them done by the end of June is kind of my rule of thumb as well, and kind of what Drake requests as well. But I mean, it's not bad to put something on there as far as improvements. But I agree with Dan.
Okay.
The other side of that, I thought one of the reasons that I don't want to waste the DNR's time or our time, but I thought we wanted to get a recommendation there and put to them so they can say yay or nay, so we can say,
That's valid as well. So the first step.
But I thought you weren't going to even submit anything to the DNR unless and until you had the funding and you knew what you were going to do. And the DNR won't say anything unless they have a specific request. As a seasoned bureaucrat, I would never say, oh, you can probably do it. I'd say, what do you want to do? Show me exactly, and then I respond to it. So
You're exactly
isn't that
correct,
correct?
Mike.
Yeah, generally,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, exactly
We
correct.
do have, lines of communication with DNR, and we are under, different orders with them that may or may not impact us, where there may be some
guidance.
communication, but I don't think they're going to give us a green light without, actually proceeding to pull a permit.
They want to know what they're approving.
The plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll provide insight into that.
Yeah. Whether you want it or not.
Yeah, both of you. No, floor's yours.
well, I just want to make sure we're moving it to a point where we can get a yay or a nay. Otherwise, if we don't, we're going to be. Well,
It's the job that never ends.
Well, I appreciate the concern and what we've done, but I think for us that have been on this project for a while, it would be nice to say, are we even going to get it done? And then once we get that, then we can then give a little more detail to the citizens to say, these, if we do that, it's going to cost you this. So two things. I think one, we do want to select something and say what it is and why, and we can also say we want to do this. We want to make sure we can propose this or give this request, either through Eric or the city, to the DNR, can we dredge?
To that point, though, too, again, now that we're kind of thinking about this and fleshing it out a little bit more, there is a pre-permitting checklist that's fairly easily completed. I mean, when you fill out a full individual permit, I mean, it's a substantial amount of work that goes into actually completing those permits. But a pre-application checklist, now that that you have narrowed it down to 3 potential options, I could go through and see where are we at for a pre-application checklist for each of these 3 options. That really wouldn't be too labor intensive and would have to be done anyways prior to submitting a permit. So perhaps that's something that I could do as well. If you want to make a recommendation tonight, that's fine to do so, but I would have enough information for one with these 3 options to ask Strand for an updated cost report on each of them and maybe do a pre-application checklist on each of them and kind of judge general DNR feedback and input on it. I've got enough tools in my toolbox now to move forward with something.
Yeah, okay. I think that's good stewardship. Okay. And I think that we can also with that get us moving forward. You can get
I've got something to flesh off my work on now.
Yes.
I have a question, and that being, I know it's not really feasible to give specifics, but, you know, one of the questions about an unknown is what can be done and what type of money could maybe be recovered from the spoils, I'll say the spoils, the dredged materials. So, is there any information historically about something done in a comparable way elsewhere that we could get an idea? Because when we look at the 3 options, you know, particularly, you know, the one, there's a lot more material. And if we could get an idea how that might offset costs. And also, I guess my question would be, and I don't know the answer to this, but if we don't get a substantial offset, could we be incurring costs to get rid of the materials?
Yes, and those, and those, exactly. So those are the difference between the cost of project landfill excavation. We are paying to remove that material. And then the other option is cost of beneficial reuse. Not only are we not having to pay to dispose of it, but someone's taking it for us.
So we have no idea of any estimates.
I think what I
can we
addressed it, didn't they, in their study about how they thought it would probably be usable?
But then again, to what extent, that is a variable that we don't quite know. Are there similar projects in the area, like has there been projects done at Lake Koshkonong where they had substantial amounts of beneficial reuse? I'm not quite sure.
Okay.
So I think that could be something. I definitely have enough material to say to what extent has beneficial reuse been an option.
Okay, because I think that would be good when we're looking at the 3 choices.
I just want to make sure everybody's hearing the conversation, so if we can just keep the...
Okay.
Yep. So out of the 3 things, like I said, this is more than enough for me to go off of and report back at the next Parks Board meeting. I can get updated cost analysis for both beneficial reuse and landfill excavation. The next question is going to be, to what extent is beneficial reuse an option here? And see what that looks like for neighboring projects. I have no information on that. And then the next would be, I can do a pre-application checklist on these 3 options, see what materials and what resources are going to be involved in them. I have a feeling they're all going to be very similar. Each of these 3 options will absolutely require an individual permit from the DNR. So very similar, but how many people are going to be involved in the aspects of it? A pre-application checklist is a 1.5-page document that you can fill out. So I can go through and at least do that for 3 options.
The other thing, that, to my understanding, because of the testing, that there's no like heavy metals or beyond usability, they can. It's to my knowledge, we do have a place to put this potentially, so we're good there. And the other thing that we want to make sure of is that we want to make sure that we understand that if we push this off another year, costs are going to go up another 10%.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I understand. I mean, I was the one that was concerned, and I just don't know if it's going to make a huge difference if we wait until the next meeting, which might be, what are we talking about, July 8th or something? Or, you know, I guess that's my question, you know.
Well, just to speak to the beneficial use, in a sense that would affect the absolute costs, but you could probably safely assume that the ratio would stay the same. Could you
It's
not? I
different
mean,
amounts here.
If you're getting half as much sediment out in option whatever,
Yeah, that could be accurate. Now, I don't, yeah, I think that's a fair statement, but like I said, I really don't know that much about it.
Yeah.
To what extent,
Investigate.
yeah, I don't know that much to speak of it, really.
Anita's doing some math or some searching.
No, I'm just kind of looking again and trying to figure out if it makes sense for us to make a decision tonight or to look forward to the other.
project fatigue.
I know, it's like getting late.
Do we have as a next step also to have a dialogue with Patricia Cicero? Is there anything that would be beneficial coming off of her ecology study with these options that might help support anything?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's beneficial.
You have
for
your
future.
general ecology of the mill pond. I mean, what I could do is at least get a commentary on 3 potential options from that office at the county. That could be an option, but
I think it's relatively safe to assume that the least amount of disturbance is going to be,
Their preference.
Yes.
You're not going to learn anything
that is
new.
going to be
Okay, I
perfect.
didn't know if there were a checkpoint that
in
needed
general
to be added to the
conversations
list.
with Colton, I mean, when the first conversation was dredge entire surface water body area, he drastically approved the option that dredge the shoreline because it's less disturbance. So I think that's a fair statement. But then again, I haven't gone forward with these 3 available options to the Land and Water Conservation Department yet.
So, given what we've heard and our options, and right now, A is to finalize a recommendation on the next steps. So if I'm hearing, our recommendation is to present the 3 that we have come to at this point.
To City Council?
To City Council. And with the pros and cons to the City Council. And that would be at the June 19th meeting or
18th.
18th meeting?
Yep.
And we could do that.
But not our vote for the final, just these are the options we're considering.
Yes, and we could also, as part of going to presentation B, we could say, well, here's what we come up with, this is what we're waiting on. And we're waiting, and we'd get more delineation, we're waiting on Eric's report on, and I apologize, what do you call it, the
pre-application checklist?
Checklist.
Costs.
What was that, Mary?
The costs.
Yeah, costs from Strand. What else would we want to make sure we present to the City Council?
That, and then the further information on likelihood of beneficial reuse, or further information on beneficial reuse.
Yes. And the other, I believe, next steps part of that would be, we will present what we have at their next, one of the, I guess it would be August meeting then?
Well, if you meet on Monday, July 8th, there will be a further meeting at the end of July. So the second council meeting in July, you could.
Okay, just be aware of that we haven't decided whether we're meeting on a Monday or if we're meeting on
That's what I was gonna say.
Wednesday. So
I was gonna
pressure on you
say,
folks.
if you meet on July 8th, therefore you could meet at the second city council meeting in July.
All right, so July 8th is 2.5 weeks away? 3?
No, a month.
4? July, so it's a full month. Are you able to give us in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, the stuff that would help us make a presentation or make decisions on July 8th?
Yeah, I feel fairly confident in that.
Fairly or confident?
I feel confident that I
Right.
can provide those
From
materials.
a scheduling perspective, this is a special meeting. Are you having your regular meeting in the 3rd week of the month?
We are not.
You are not, okay, now I understand.
Yep.
Would that be upstairs then? Are we back to that?
I would have to
Monday versus
confirm,
Wednesday?
but that's why that Monday, July 8th was kind of chosen, was because we had room availability. I'd have to confirm with Madison tomorrow, but that's why that was initially proposed.
Do you want to, are we doing availability on that? That was on our agenda. Do you want to wait till the end?
I don't know if I'm available.
Oh, you don't
I just want to make, I want to stay with this at the moment to make sure we are clear about what we are finalizing and what are we presenting to the June 18th City Council meeting.
I'd say your three options that you've narrowed down at this point, what we need to do to move forward as far as to form a recommendation. I think that would be more than appropriate. The options that you have eliminated, that could be a opportunity as well. But I would say, what are our next steps moving forward and the additional information that we need?
Right, and that the fact that we want to make sure we're doing this and potential for approval anyway.
I think at that meeting it'd also be important to highlight the steps we have taken so far already since we started this process. And I have, at the last meeting, we kind of went through and made a list of all the things that we've done. I think it'd be good to highlight that as well. Just kind of showing once again that we're doing our due diligence.
Yes. Now, could you, do we have time right now to sit, I know we had a public meeting in.
I can go through these.
Yeah, I would just do that so we're clear.
So we had, as far as what the Parks Board has done in regards to this resolution from City Council, is obtained ecological information relating to fish and plant species present in the mill pond. That's from Jefferson County Land and
Water Conservation
Water
Department.
conservation.
And water conservation. And I have Patricia's name down. Does anyone know Colton's last name?
Colton Hutchinson.
Hutchinson. Okay. Obtained historical imagery and documentation from the Lake Mills Historical Society, and additional historical photos and information was obtained from Lake Mills community members. Cost, we applied annual average inflation to the alternatives listed in the OPCC included with the 2018 Mill Pond feasibility study from Strand. The costs of alternatives not listed in the 2018 report were extrapolated from the alternatives that were listed in the report. Public input. We held a public hearing to gather input on the available options for mill pond maintenance and improvements. Additional public input was obtained through emails from the public to Parks Board members. We gather input from the fire departments regarding how maintenance and improvements to the mill pond would affect the department's ability to respond to incidents on the lake. We obtained an example permit application from the recently completed dredging of the mill pond channel, and reviewed the edits provided by Patricia Cicero from Jefferson County to the memo from Steve Wilkie to the City Council dated February 15th, 2018 regarding future management of the mill pond.
You'll send me those two, eh?
Yes.
Thank you.
So that people agree to.
Yes, any additions?
Well, the additions we just took, or the actions we just took where we assessed,
Yes.
discussed pros, cons of five options,
Yes, that's a good point.
Narrowed it down to 3.
narrowed it down to 3. Yeah, that's pretty
And
big
as
step
part of that,
in action.
We're doing the cost-benefit analysis also with that too. So.
So it sounds like you've kind of created a report.
Yep.
Right? Why don't someone motion to present that to the council on the meeting?
Discussion.
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, so Mike, second. Everyone in favor for creating a presentation as roughed out at this moment to the council on June 18th? Everybody say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Thank you.
May I ask who is presenting?
McCray, it sounds like.
That's what we all voted for.
Oh.
You wouldn't hear that.
No, actually, but McCray, if you want to be with, I think both of us.
Sure.
plan
On the
for that.
18th, you said?
On the 18th, yes. At 6 o'clock, I believe?
7.
7 o'clock.
Yep. And again, it can be a verbal report.
Yes.
7 o'clock?
While we have you here and you have your audience and your council, city council people, would they like to have the visuals, or they've been prepared for all this before?
I mean, I think we'll want them with your final recommendation if you want to share them.
I'd prefer not to. These ones are pretty rough.
Okay.
I prefer not
That's
to.
fine.
Tweaked maybe for your recommendations.
Yes.
Yeah.
This so they know we have done preliminary. All right, fine. Because sometimes it's better to be kind of not as detailed.
You can look at tonight's agenda.
Sure.
There you go. All right, so that is, what, I propose that we skip Sandy Beach restaurant details, interest of time.
Sorry, Tim, does that mean we're not going to vote on the RLIA proposal, just because ran out of time?
I don't believe
There's really not much to vote.
That proposal at this point, it wasn't appropriately identified on the agenda, no action was identified.
In time?
The statement itself, RLIA presentation, what
Not
does
enough.
that entail?
Okay.
Yeah, that was the rough thing, so when it, yeah.
And that's what we're referring to here on C? Or?
No.
Oh, it's something different, okay.
Yeah.
So that's deferred?
To my knowledge, the Sandy Beach restaurant details are what the architects are doing and what such.
It's basically just a city staff update as far as the progress regarding the Sandy Beach restaurant.
Correct. What we heard tonight as far as from the Rock Lake.
Was different, no, I understand now.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
completely different, and as Dan says it was, they were given recommendations, which that wasn't on the agenda, and so we can't really talk about that. That'd be, to me, it'd be more on public comment than it was anything else.
Okay.
So now we're at Parks Board meetings, discussion, and decision. One, attendance absent notification process. We can let's push that one out. E, though, the date and time. The advantage, we do the pros cons. Advantage of doing it on Monday, to my knowledge, is one, we have access to the city council chambers.
It does depend on the Monday of the month, but that's why the second Monday of the month we would be
All right, so
default have access to.
all right, so the second Monday is open generally.
Yeah, school districts on the first,
Yep.
generally, yes.
And that's what I had kind of looked, those would be the most available options for that room.
Right. So that one, or it would be keeping it as it is, which is on the third Wednesday of the month. So,
And with that, with regard to the council chambers specifically, you do compete with court. But that you could, he's actually not holding court now on the third Wednesday of the month. I believe it's open. That's a recent change this year.
so do we have any idea for how long that change is going to happen?
No, right now with volume, I think that we're being pretty efficient and they're just holding joint court on the first Wednesday of the month. I don't believe that he is regularly scheduling on the third Wednesday of the month, but he is scheduling like on an as-needed basis for trials specifically. So there may be some competition there, but it won't be as regularly as he's scheduling.
Thank you for bringing up that. I personally would like to minimize it as conflict as much as possible. So with that, I bring that up as.
So go with the Mondays, what you're thinking.
I'm thinking Monday would give us the least amount of conflicts and would also work, from my understanding, in most people's schedules.
Personally, I prefer Monday meetings, but that's just me.
And Eric wants it on Monday, so that's what we're
Hey,
going
don't
And we all
totally
better-
say that.
It's a done deal then.
But my thought too is, our goal here is, yes, we do now have the flexibility, we're not codified by ordinance. However, we should set a regular meeting date and time that we move forward with, and then move it by exceptions if something comes up. If you have something that works with having the venue up there, you also have remote Zoom access as well, which is a plus. If someone cannot attend in person, they can still attend virtually, much more reliably than any setup down here.
And that's a very valid point.
Yeah.
For us to be there.
Yeah.
We can do Zoom up there. The other,
That works for me.
yeah, I'll let that. Any other, so,
Time?
yes, great.
Time for these?
I think the time says same 5:30.
Okay, yes. 5 is a little tough for me.
A little tough.
Yeah. 5:30 has been pretty much the standard for the Parks Board.
Do we need to make a motion and?
We're gonna
vote
get
on
there
this
in a
when we
moment,
get there?
yes.
Okay.
So if I'm hearing, everyone, we can go with second Monday of the month, 5:30. The other advantage of that, to my knowledge, is that potentially then are we then always ahead of the city council?
Yeah, but you
About
would,
one day.
unless there's a definite major circumstance, you would therefore miss any opportunity to get something on the city council agenda for the next day.
But still, that would,
Not the next day.
not the next day,
following
next
First
meeting.
First and third Tuesday, our city council.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, then that's true.
Yes, so I think that's another advantage for
Is it second Monday?
doing that on Monday.
If we do it the second Monday. She's saying the city council's the third.
Yep, and July 8th is that second Monday of the month.
Yes.
Waste a lot of time. I give you credit.
So I motion that we move the Parks Board meetings, regular scheduled meetings, to the second Monday of the month at 5:30 going forward, starting July 8th, 2024. Do I have a second on that?
Second that motion.
Do I have a vote? So I'm an aye.
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 All right, so please note it. As part of that, I do think we probably want to put in some sort of announcement in the leader or on the city website
I can do city website, yeah, that'll be
that
fine.
we're changing it. I don't think we need to tell them why, but that's, that we're doing.
And there'll still be the same notification practices when we do the agendas as well, so I can do something on Parks Board.
Yes, wonderful. Could you speak to, again, if someone's missing or whatever, because McCray is the vice chair, what is the time to get it on the agenda through you and,
Let me talk with Madison, because I'm not sure if Mondays would change this at all, but normally we try to do the Thursday prior. Perhaps this one we could maybe move to Wednesday prior, just provide the materials the Wednesday prior to the
yes,
meeting.
yeah, I just think that should be a standard, and it should be noted that's what our goal is, to make sure it's at least a week before
Yes.
the meeting.
Yep, that would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
So the Wednesday before.
Would be like absolute deadline, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. All right, so moving to item 9, right, because we had a resolution, so I go to any announcements, people? No? Recommendations for future agenda items? From what we heard tonight, is there anything we want to put on there? Have Dan here every time, is that what we're?
Well, that's
recommending?
understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
If not, then we're gonna go on.
Before you go, I think we ought to have the Sandy Beach discussion and possible, I do think we ought to discuss if we want to make a suggestion to city council on our opinion or whatever. I mean, we can do that, correct? Do we have the authority?
It would be like a suggestion. It is within the council, or the city council's authority at this point to approve or deny a projected design from the architect firm. I would say if you would like to make a recommendation, you could, but that would be within your authority.
Are you thinking in regards to the green concept, or just?
I will say at this point, I could provide an update as far as where we're at with the architects. We will have a subsequent meeting with the architects prior to city council. We have not yet discussed landscape design or development. The importance of adding impervious surfaces or limiting impervious surfaces as much as possible, taking into account rain garden installations has been discussed, that it's a priority, but we haven't seen any concepts or designs including them yet.
Okay.
Right now, it's just been building design, no landscape design elements have been proposed to us yet, but we did say that that was a priority.
But you guys can tell them that this is what we
We
want.
did tell them. Yeah, we said this is a priority of ours, but we haven't seen a concept yet. So when they provide a concept, you say, I like this aspect, I don't like this one, let's add more of this, let's subtract some of this. We have blankets stated that we are interested in pursuing sustainable materials that have stormwater control and are impervious.
Excellent.
So that's an agenda item for July 8th.
Okay.
And what that'll look like when we get a concept, I haven't seen it yet.
Because that you're going to present that at the July 8th meeting.
I will have to check to see when the next follow-up meeting is with the architect firm, but we have been on schedule for one a month. We have not yet had a June one, so I would anticipate that I'd have something to report on for July.
Right.
I can confirm with you, but we should have a June meeting with them.
So thank you.
Okay, one other thing, do you want to discuss extent of minutes and suggestions on the part of the
In a moment.
board? Oh,
In
I
a
meant
moment.
for the agenda,
Oh, sure.
or not. I mean,
No, we certainly can. We certainly can. So we're talking about the amount of detail, whether or not the format should be synopsis, like the, what is an executive summary?
Right.
Yeah, we should do I think, create an executive summary and then say if you need more detail of the full part, then they can find it on the website. And I do think that we also want to make sure that it's searchable if possible. So if there's something going forward, there's ways we can timestamp, both on the agenda or whatever. Again, I don't know. I think people
You mean
want that
searchable on video or searchable in the document?
I will say this will be infinitely easier if we do film in city council chambers because everything is separated there. What we have here is all of these need to be manually timestamped, whereas when you're recording in city council chambers, it's much, much easier to do that. So I would be very curious to see what it's like moving forward with city councils as a venue, and then we have that ease of access for Dave to timestamp these videos. So we should see an improvement when we have that change of venue.
And I'll have some input from Misty by then too.
Wonderful. So, but I do think it would be helpful on the minutes to timestamp them if we can.
Yeah, in the video minutes.
Both in the paper and in the
Because the
video.
paper, I think you can just do a search. You want to see water lilies, you can type in water lilies.
I guess I'm not being clear.
Maybe I can chime in. So once you're in the council chambers and it's being recorded by our IT specialist, then after that occurs, people can go online, they can watch the video through YouTube, so you can speed it up.
Right.
If you want to watch it a little faster. And the agenda will have each agenda item. If you click on the agenda item, it'll go to that place in the video automatically.
Yes.
So if people are only interested in one item, they can go to that. So that all gets.
But I think that's the extent of the searching ability on the video, is that you can only go to that section of the discussion. You can't say, I want to.
Search by words or
No,
anything.
that we don't have the ability.
I don't know anybody does. That would be pretty.
But that would be fine. So that if we tell them if this, that's kind of tell them that's what happens. If you wanted to hear this, click on this item, and it'll take you right to that.
Yes.
So that'd be good. Thank you. So yes, Mary.
Another agenda item, I'm curious how we address the public comment by Mr. Owens, who talked about the possibility of a park. I'm not sure how that, if that is something that we put on the agenda, or if that's something that
I would say that could be included in the next redrafting of the CORP, which is the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, but I think there's definitely further research that we need to do as far as potential annexation of that property if it's not within the city district. So I think there should be some city staff research first. I don't think we're quite at the point to really just... The fact that he brought it up, phenomenal. That's great. Please don't forget about it as an option. But in order for the Parks Board to do anything action-wise at this point, I do not have enough information to move forward with anything on that.
Well, and to that point, I'm not sure what
I don't think that's ours.
Charlie Hunts's ask was. I think it was more of a tell that here it is, but I didn't hear an ask.
For one thing, it may just respond and say, we got it, we're looking into it, really appreciate you showing up. I think he's feeling like he's offering it and no one's telling him anything. That's what I got.
I think that's absolutely appropriate.
And what is his name? Am I going to get that sign-in sheet?
UNTZ.
TZ?
Yes, UNTZ.
And I did not wear my hearing aids, and I apologize profusely. So that's where I see that is, if that's going to be brought up, there's substantial amount of work, city administration, that we have to do that. What are we working with here, and what are the processes that we need to move forward with?
Yep. The other potential agenda item is what do we do with what the Parks Board should do when it comes to the whole deal? Is that part of the architecture and the landscaping piece that Susan presented?
That would be within the final approval of City Council. Oh, specifically for the restaurant or Sandy Beach or?
The landscaping, you said the landscaping?
Well, what she just was telling us about the parking and the setback.
I was going to say, we're specifically only addressing the building, the actual structure itself. We are not at the point to discuss landscape design, parking lot yet. We're not at that stage of development within the project.
Okay. So we're hearing we're not.
Eventually, there will be
the parking requirements for Sandy Beach.
We are not at that point yet.
Okay. All right.
We will be at some point, but we're not there yet.
All right. Do we have any ideas what some point is this year yet, or?
There are, I'd have to look back in the constructions or proposed schedule for Sandy Beach Restaurant. Proposed being mid-25, I think, that'd be very earliest. Would be
Well, and the reason I'm asking is she seemed to have quite a bit of energy, wanting to get it on before this July 19th meeting. So she presented this as a kind of a surprise ask, I thought.
Yeah.
But do we need to do anything more in our July 8th regarding this? Are we saying this is not our deal?
My personal thoughts are, at this point, city staff have said, we have interested parties, we are also interested, we would like to see what the architect firm is capable of doing in their design to maximize impervious surfaces and rain gardens.
Okay.
That is what we've, and it is as broad as that was the ask, and seeing what they are capable of coming.
So you don't see any point in the park board of saying we concur, we encourage the city to in fact pursue?
I don't have a design yet for you to concur on.
Right. No, I mean your priorities.
That
I think
that
that's
interest.
what
I
they're
mean,
asking.
we have expressed that interest. We are the customer for this architect firm. City administration has said we, among others, invested parties within the community, would like to see this design incorporate impervious surfaces and rain gardens.
All right, thank you. So if I'm getting the gist of this, on the next agenda, we're going to have the Sandy Beach restaurant details is being moved to the next agenda, correct?
Yep.
And the Parks Board meeting discussion and decision as to the format and executive summary and detail that
minutes.
should be done, I think that needs to be put back on the agenda. The attendance absence notification process is going to be on the agenda.
The attendance?
Attendance and absence notification process,
Okay.
which is I in
Oh,
the
okay.
agenda. And
I think Anita had brought up, do we want to discuss the request from the RLIA about that, or not?
I'm kind of hoping we can be proactive, because I think that's one of our roles here. I understand we're a subordinate board to the city council, but I feel based on the amount of water I've seen down there, it's been hideous lately down by the parking area down there on Sandy Beach. It's just really, so I'm hoping we can be proactive and not kind of wait until the plans are already made. I don't know how else to say it. I'm getting really tired.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
very
maybe
valid.
not being real articulate right now, but
no, that's fine. So what I'm hearing is you want to bring this up about the cause and effects of not having the proper or the best.
If only for a
surface.
positive reinforcement, if the board agrees.
Yeah.
if we could get a copy between now and then of her materials, just to kind of review it, that would be great.
Okay.
Yep. I'll include it as a link as well in the agenda minutes or agenda.
So that would be just follow up to the presentation.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And anything other than what has already been put on there to add to the agenda items?
We can hold off on the business with the fences and stuff for the Rotary Park. That's down the line.
That is very much I would like to please finish what I have with the posts and everything.
Oh, you don't have enough?
First. Yeah.
We'll put that under, we've heard.
That will be continued pickleball infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
At this point, I will say that when I need Parks Board approval and discussion, I'll bring it up to you guys.
Right, so this would now be,
We will get there.
what I'm hearing, you'll put that into your director's
Good.
report
Okay.
and as an update.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Anything else? Then I don't know if we have to have a vote, but how about we adjourn?